The following is a presentation of the Force Center podcast feed.
From the center of history and from Force Center, this is Indiana Jones and the Perilous Podcasts, a deep dive discussion about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'm Ken Napzok.
I'm Joseph Scrimshaw, and I'm excited to have this episode be Force Center and the speaking of the spoilers. I'm so excited to dive all the way into Dial of Destiny.
Well, that is what we're going to do. We've been having a lot of fun, first on Patreon, then to the public with the Indiana Jones and the Perilous Podcast series, something you all made happen because of your support on Patreon. It's kind of our first foray into other center, looking at things outside the Star Wars galaxy. But this one made a lot of sense. Indiana Jones, Spielberg, Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy, and Harrison Ford. The connections are strong. And it all built up to this Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny, the fifth movie in the franchise. Final, you put a question mark on that. I think that's fair, but by all accounts, what we've been told, the final with Harrison Ford as Henry Walton Jones Jr. We are going to, as we said, dive in, as Joseph just kind of mentioned. This is a heavy spoiler discussion. And the off chance that you're a Force Center listener who's still planning to see the movie but haven't had a chance to yet, go ahead, press pause, come back when you have, because we are going deep into this one, Joseph.
That is right. And I want to echo Ken's thanks for the Patreon supporters who made it possible for us to experiment with Indiana Jones and the Perilous Podcast. I would have really enjoyed this movie regardless, but spending the time to really go through each film, really discuss them, has greatly increased my love of this franchise and greatly increased my appreciation of this film, which I would have really, really liked, but instead I love. So I can't wait to dive into it. We're going to be talking about this one the same way we talked about some of the other films, which we've been spending a moment to really just look at, hey, who did this? Hey, who did this?
Hey,
who made this film? Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is swinging into theaters at a big ol' 154 minutes. It's one of those longer movies that they have in the cinemas today, Ken. Directed by James Mangold, a human with a name that sounds like other people would have paid to get that last name.
Yes.
But I guess it's just his, James Mangold. Continuing with our adventures in interesting last names, the film is written by Jess Butterworth and John Henry Butterworth. Some siblings. They have a history as playwrights, and they've worked a lot with Mangold. Working on films like Ford v. Ferrari, and then other films that not Mangold connected necessarily, like the James Bond film Spectre, which I like very much, and I'm often very alone in, Edge of Tomorrow, which other people actually do like. And it also gives credit to David Koepp, who worked on an earlier draft was the writer of Crystal Skull, and then some other movies you might have heard of, like Jurassic Park and 2002 Spider-Man and Mordecai. So a lot going on there. And then, of course, James Mangold himself is given a writer's credit as well. Ken, any reactions to the writing credit? This is directed by James Mangold, not Steven Spielberg, that beginning point of discussion.
That's a great way to start this discussion. My journey with Mangold has been interesting because as Force Center listeners have discovered, I've been like, I know he did Logan and I can't remember what else. And then people were like, hey, he did two of the other movies you talk about a lot, or at least enjoy, and have talked about in other podcasts, 3:10 to Yuma, the remake of that. And then Girl Interrupted from 1999. I love that film. Big Angelina Jolie fan, and Winona Ryder. That was like this big Oscar film and all those things. I was a big fan. 1999 Ken was a cinephile for 1 year during that year. A lot of great movies. And so I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I don't pay attention to director credits. And that kind of along the way made me excited. Plus his now involvement, official involvement in Star Wars. There've been some unofficial involvement in Star Wars before with the possible Boba Fett movie. But when the change happened, which was 2019, 2020 range, when Spielberg
2020, when Spielberg officially stepped down.
I had some trepidation. We'd already been a few years into the Star Wars world, not having George, was directly involved, and that had worked out fine for me. I know that hasn't worked out for everybody. So, but Indy's, I don't know, different character, different franchise, different beast, and so We're going to talk about it and what Jim brought to it. And I absolutely loved what he brought to it at the end of the day. But yeah, that's a good place to start. I was nervous.
Yeah, I think I was not. I have still not seen Girl Interrupted. I need to get on that and complete my 1999 film studies. I was mostly familiar with Mangold from Logan, and like many people thought, Logan was amazing because it was so layered, had such interesting ideas. But I love that Mangold kind of became in pop culture discussion circles like you need a story of a brooding older man at the end of their journey. You go to Big Jim Mangold for that. And that's what started the suspicion and the hope that he'd write an old man Boba Fett film. And turns out now we realize he was working on it. So when he was announced, I was happy about it for a couple reasons. I didn't want Spielberg to do it if Spielberg wasn't feeling it. And now that I know a little bit more of Spielberg's story, just deeply loved the Fabelmans. And seeing that he's in a different place and needs to do something different. I think there's nothing wrong with passing off the baton. And Mangold seemed like a great person to do that because I think he does have a passion for this kind of story, which is the sunset of the old man Logan, old man Indy. But also this is a generational tale. This is without literally being like we're setting up and announcing the Helena Shaw franchise, it still is a generational tale, and to me that makes it more powerful when a director has a relationship like Mangold has with these. Of I grew up with these, I'm taking the baton from Spielberg, I'm learning from him, but I'm also trying to make it my own. That's part of the story, so it makes sense to me that that's a part of the director.
Yeah, absolutely. And Spielberg has said some good things since the movie came out, obviously, but it makes some sense. But reading some of the things he told him before, it seems like it all hit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we always like to talk about our experience of viewing the film because I think the way that we see it, who we see it with, what headspace we're in can sometimes affect the way that we take in a film. So you got to have a fun experience by going to the premiere with Mark Ellis, right?
Yeah, it was Mark Ellis's Plus One, and those are always fun. Can't lie, they're pressy, they're work events for sure, but they're damn fun ones. And so there was a lot of thrill, a lot of great energy. Got to hang out for a brief second, as I said before, with our buddy Nikki Kumar from the Imperial Senate podcast, Gus from Try to the Force, the James and John from the Resistance broadcast were there, and I think that was their first film premiere experience. It's fun to see that, and they're all dressed up. A lot of fun experience, but it can stress me out a little bit because you're in a room full of cynical people. Cynical people, and if you're coming to for a cynical view of Dial of Destiny, this ain't it, sport. And I can carry that kind of anxiety into me, but I had total fun, and Mark is not that at all. So we had a lot of fun and celebrated. And then I got to see it in the public this past weekend, which was great, except for just the people I shared the theater with, as you all hear on another episode of Force Center this week on the news show. But a lot of fun, good experiences.
Well, good. I'm happy to hear that it was a good experience, and I know what you're saying about the premieres. From I haven't been to one, but now understanding it, talking to people like yourself about it. A lot of times the premieres are sort of broadcast to the world as the stars show up, and here's the lines of the stars, signing things for people cosplaying as their characters. So it looks from the outside like a fan event, but your experience has been there are a lot of people from the industry. There's press, there's other creators, and they're all a little bit of like, is this going to work for me or not? Arms folded. Is that what you mean by the cynical energy?
Yeah. And that's a general sweep. And I always like to say, hey, I'm being general here. Specific people enjoyed it and had good conversations. Nikki, Gus, James, and John for one. But yeah, just where the industry is, and it's just I think there's an art to being a film critic, and I think there's a lot of people who don't aren't artists in that regard. And the arms folded is a great way to look at it. And there's people in the industry who have probably great things and great critiques, and no movie is perfect. That's not what we do here. But if you're just showing up to Force Center, who are these guys talking about Indiana Jones? This is a look at the themes. This is a look at the art. This is a look at what the movie is saying to you and how you can apply it to your life. Also, I'm a giant fan of Indiana Jones, so I'm coming into it with an open heart. And I don't need anyone to mirror my energy for me to enjoy it. But they also love to give their opinions to you.
Unsolicited.
Yes, unsolicited opinions.
And often stated as facts.
And I'm like, I don't want to get into a fist fight at the Dolby. I got to get out of here.
So during the actual film, what was the audience responsive? Did they applaud? Did they cheer? Did they laugh?
Absolutely. They do a great job of bringing a lot of different kind of folks there. But like, there was a guy next to me I didn't know. God bless him. I think he wasn't his vibe, and that's totally cool. But he kept huffing and puffing during the movie. It's like, man, and then we're in the second balcony. I'm like, I can toss you over. Let's do this. Let's go. Like, no, I'm kidding. But it was just that kind of thing can happen. But that can happen anywhere, right? I had one of my Rise of Skywalker viewings marred by someone behind me insulting Daisy Ridley anytime her face was on screen, and it's just like that kind of stuff drives me crazy.
Yeah. Well, that is a wonderful segue into my very positive experience of seeing this film, because I think I was geared up for some of that. There had been the kind of weird, confused energy coming out of Cannes, where there was a couple of really good reviews, but then the official reaction was, ooh, it's mixed, and box office report saying probably not going to do as well at the box office as it should because they're really mixed reviews. And I have been so deeply loving our journey through the Indiana Jones films and appreciating them on more levels, and getting great responses from listeners about the things they pick out and have appreciated. And I said this on our stream. I think the trailer for Dial of Destiny is one of the best trailers I've seen, because it tells you exactly what to expect. Every Indy film has advanced what the supernatural MacGuffin is. It's a man at the end of his days who's going to have regrets. It's a Nazi. It's a Dial of Destiny. It's two people who would want to time travel. It's a daughter following in her father's footsteps. A bunch of people who would want to time travel. And I was like, I can't wait to go see a Nazi try to go back and fix World War II. Yeah. I can't wait for Indy to see what's Indy's relationship with the possibility of going back and looking one of your regrets in the face. I was so ready, like, bring on the effing time travel. My only question was when, where, and what's it going to mean? I was so ready and wanting what this film was, and was expected. It was, without really thinking about it, I was fearful of being surrounded by folded arms and, eyes rolled so hard you can hear it in the movie theater.
Yeah.
And I went to the Grauman's Chinese theater, and long story short, it was just an explosion of joy that I haven't experienced in the theater in a little while now, and it was phenomenal. Tons of people dressed up as Indy. Lot of father and son, both father and son dressed as Indy. Right. This one person had it perfectly timed, as right before the actual film began, after the trailers, screamed out Sala's line that people already knew from the trailer of "Give 'em hell, Indiana Jones," and everyone laughed and cheered. And throughout the movie, people cheered for everything. They cheered for the first appearance of CGI Indy, but then when Indy pops up in '69 in his undies, exhausted and having HR puffing stuff on the background, people applauded for Indy in his undies. They applauded for the map with lines appearing. During the train chase, there was a huge cheer, which I thought was for the Wilhelm scream, but it was because the Indy theme was kicking in. But it was like the Wilhelm scream and the Indy theme, and I was cheering for the Wilhelm theme and the rest of the Wilhelm scream and the rest of it was an explosion of love. It was just that feeling of, we love Indiana Jones and we want another Indiana Jones adventure, and we can't believe we're here. Just having that simple joy of another adventure with Indiana Jones, one more ride. And I thought the film delivered on that, but then also just had this great depth to it, which we, of course, get into. So I was lucky that I had a phenomenal experience that I feared I wouldn't. I laughed, I cheered, I cried twice, and then also I had a whiskey drink during this film that was mostly ice, and then there was a great urgency at the end of the film for me. Because I deeply had to go to the bathroom.
The 2 hours 34 minutes is an investment of time that my back and bladder don't want to often make, but got through both viewings.
Yeah,
yes,
I made it through. Yeah, and then I went to a nearby restaurant and had a burger and a martini alone, and wrote most of my thoughts of what we're going to talk about on my phone, because I was so excited to dig in and to discuss and to celebrate.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, well then let's dive into that. What was your overall reaction?
My overall reaction is 3 words, and I apologize for them because they're hopeful, happy words. Fulfilled, moved, inspired. You mentioned crying. Maybe it is my advancing years, and I'm not that old, but I bawled 2 times. The second time, like the end of the movie kind of gets me. We're going to go to the moments, of course, but I'll just say it, specifically the Sala moment. I had that, your jaws quivering and you're crying into your popcorn. And I have no problem crying publicly. I've done it here on Force Center, done it on the radio. I'll cry. I really connected with what the story was saying. I really do believe it is a very deep philosophical movie, deep emotional movie. I really think that more than the other 4, and the other 4 get me a lot too. But I think it might be the perfect intersection of not just the place I'm in life. We'll get into the themes, but some of the problems I've always had in my life of holding on or burying myself in regrets before I even need to, or not that you should ever, but there's a lot that this movie spoke to me. And I know that's not always going to be the case for everyone. Even if you like the movie, you might be like, yeah, no, it was great. Enjoyed it. Cool. A lot of fun. Didn't hit me on that level. That's fine. But that's my honest experience. And then as a lifelong Indiana Jones fan, it hit those notes, and it is a fun ride. And yes, it's somewhat of a nostalgia ride, but also this movie's dealing with that thought and that theme and that nostalgia thing, which is why I left it feeling fulfilled and inspired. And we'll dive in from there, of course. But that's both viewings. Sorry to report, I enjoyed it.
I deeply enjoyed it too, and I was moved. And I agree with you that I think there's stuff that's powerful to me personally. I think one of the things that's so powerful about it, and we certainly will talk about it with the themes, is our culture, while I think it is getting better, is still set up to make you feel past your prime at 26 years old. I think that, I used to have a joke in stand-up that there are 3 ages in our culture: not as old as you want to be, 25, and might as well be dead. And I think that's changing. I think it's getting better. I think it is worse for women. I have many thoughts about it, but I have been done harm to myself by thinking I'm done and I can't tell people my age, And then I look at a film like this where an 80-year-old man is knocking it out of the park and still wrestling with, those themes. And yeah, I can't lie that journey of wrestling with one's relationship to time and one's place in it and one's value and when are you just used up and not a part of the world anymore, are deeply, deeply affecting to me right now. So my 2 cry moments was, even though at the end, even though you knew the turn was coming, you knew that someone was there for him. But when he's, waking up back in the present time, which he's not a fan of, and I can't remember the exact line, but, Helena has the setup of like, you're needed here. And I think one of Harrison Ford's finest moments, for who? That resonates. That lie that culture trains us to tell ourselves of, I'm past my prime, whatever, or whenever that was. Who could possibly need what I am? And to have that dealt with and turned around, and we'll talk about it more, but that really, really got me. And then honestly, a random moment when they were having some classic Indy fun and on a rope bridge about to mess up somebody's tomb like they do. And I just thought, I think my father-in-law would have liked this movie. And grief comes at you, and my father-in-law recently passed, and it hit me, because the film is also about having father figures in your life. So, so very powerful film. I will own the personal things that I wrestle with that make it powerful for me. But I also think on an analytical level, it isn't just this movie sparked me because of my issues. That's a part of it. That's a part of the art. But I also think from an analytical level, this is an incredibly well-constructed film. Such a great balance of the old and new. It was both a thrilling adventure movie inspired by pulps and Saturday matinees. It was a classic indie movie that hit a lot of the classic indie beats like I Want. But then it was also a movie set in its own unique time and a really moving reflection on an Indiana Jones who had palpably experienced everything that we've seen him experience and learned the lessons from it. So it was both a classic indie movie and this. It was like the indie movies of the past were like sort of a contemporary wine that was great, and now this is aged wine, and it makes it both the same and different. And I just thought it had so many great hallmarks of Indy's adventures, from really sharp comedy, well written zingers delivered well by a lot of people, but Ford and Phoebe Waller-Bridge were just amazing comedy chops, great set pieces that felt fresh, pulpy stuff, but then also all of the depth of the themes of the previous indie films and things we're going to talk about. Lucas's anti-establishment thread. Like, there's so much depth to this film, as well as just delivering. This picture's got everything. It's got comedy. It's got action. It's got depth. I feel really strongly about how well made this film is.
Yeah, I really think it had a lot to say, and it said it in its own way. And all previous indie films have also had a lot to say. That's why we've had fun breaking them down. I think one of the more layered is Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That was why that discussion you and I just had was so fun and robust. And there's a lot that it's saying. And I've been telling friends. They've been texting me since. I'm like, that movie is an indictment on 1950s America and then the harm that caused. I think that's Crystal Skull. And I think this movie surpassed that in some layers, but also not remaining on the surface, but just it was wrapped up in such a fun package. I left out of the theater going, I must talk about some of these things, both big and small, that were said in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was exactly what I love in Star Wars, and what I love when comic book storytelling is great. Is it has fun, it has whimsy, it has the fantastic, it has thrills that you can't see in real life and are heightened and not realistic. Harrison Ford's in great shape, but an 80-year-old ain't surviving half the things that he did. It's heightened, but it's this great thrill ride that also just has all of this heart and all of this depth if you're willing to embrace it on that level.
Yeah. And we acknowledge, as always, everyone's opinions, different takes on it. There might be some directorial choices or this and that things discussed, and we'll get to it. But that's not why I go to the movies, and that's not why I want to talk about the movies.
Yeah. I mean, I don't go to the movies just to be disappointed and upset. I have plenty of things at home for that. I have upset and disappointment at home. I'm not paying $25 for it. Anyway, that's my grumpy old man moment for the day. Middle-aged man, not old, damn it. All right, let's get into this. Let's talk about the ideas at stake in this movie, the big themes. I agree with you. I think that there was some really big picture. The film is quite blatant about these issues, and then lots of textures and issues and ideas within. So starting big, where do you go for the big picture idea of this movie?
I go where I've been, what I've been yelling in bars since I saw this movie. This is a movie of Indiana Jones versus time, which is to me the one artifact that he can't necessarily control or get his hands on or put in a museum or analyze. It's this big thing that we all face. And this isn't as I always say, you and I sometimes just point at the screen and go, hey, that's what's there. You don't need a shovel to dig deep to find this one. It's in the advertising, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the title. But it's not a small theme. I don't want anyone to overlook it, because whether you're there or not, you're facing it. Like there's the one review. I don't even know. I don't want to call them out. I don't care to. But that thing, that headline that went out of, Karen Allen appears in this movie. It's a cameo, and she's almost unrecognizable. And it's just like, there, for the grace of God, go you. Age will find you. Also, by the way, Karen Allen looks damn amazing, and she's wonderful. And I'm so happy she's there. She looked wonderful at the premiere. So stop with your ageism. But it's just like that. Time's coming for all of us. And along the way, as it pulls you forward, whether you want to or not, all those things, those regrets, those pain, the sadness. I saw one tweet about someone who really enjoyed this film, and they were also like, Harrison brought just this real level of sadness to it that was, and these are my words, but kind of like haunting, and it drove a lot of this for me, and a lot of pain, and that was very real. And hearing some quotes from Mangold and him and Ford saying that they felt that, and this is from Harrison Ford, like, this isn't anything about Crystal Skull. I know there's a lot of conversations about that movie, but hey, that movie, even though it was set in 1957 and it dealt with an older Harrison Ford, and I think it dealt with him having to redefine himself at this era, era in his life, it didn't directly deal with the actual him being old as much as maybe they would have wanted Harrison. And I think that's fair from a certain point of view. I don't think it's a negative comment. It's just different time, 2008, different style movie. And also now we have a really, really old Harrison, right? It's a different age, different time. And that James Mangold said, we need to run right at that. And otherwise you're going to get lost in the snark. You're going to get lost in the, 80-year-old guy doing this. No, he is. And we're going to deal with that. So Indiana Jones versus Time is the big thesis statement of the themes. And then it just spirals out and sprawls out from there.
I really agree with you about how important the time thing is. And I understand where people are coming from. I feel like with Crystal Skull, it's acknowledged, right? And they wanted to acknowledge it. And Indy makes a quip at the beginning of the film of, it's not going to be as easy as it used to be.
Right.
But we watch that film, and that's a film about a middle-aged man.
Yes. Yeah.
And he is still doing all the things that Indy does, including have the big rock'em sock'em knockdown brawl with the big bruiser, the Pat Roach legacy character.
Yeah.
And just as one example of how this is a film about a man at the end of his life, a truly old man, or near the end of his life. There's this great thread of like in Dial of Destiny of like, this Indiana Jones is not going to have a big fist fight with the big bruiser character. There's that one scene where the big bruiser punches him and he's just like out. And when the bruiser's coming at him in the protest scene, he's trying to figure out how to get out of there because he knows like, I can't do that. In Crystal Skull, it was a little harder. Now I can't. So I think even just on a surface level, we are treating him as older than he was in Crystal Skull. And I don't think Crystal Skull is about a midlife crisis. This is about an end of life journey.
Yeah.
And a couple of the things in this sort of Indiana Jones versus Time theme that you're talking about, out of your time, that really spoke to me is it's one thing to feel older and feel like I can't quite keep up and I can't quite do the things that I used to do. It's an entirely different thing to feel like I've lived so long, I don't make sense to the world and the world doesn't make sense to me. I am an anachronism. I am a living anachronism. And that's part of what he's wrestling with. He's had the loss and very much huge issues of connection that I want to talk about. But in terms of this time thing, this is one of the things that I think the trailer also plays super fair about, and I was really jazzed about, of Indiana Jones is a character who looks to the past for connection and meaning. That's the true value of archaeology and artifacts, is knowledge, understanding, connection with the human journey. He digs in the earth and the past for connection. Now everyone around him is obsessed with space and the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is this layer of obviously there's a huge amount of wonderful things about the space race, that science and discovery that came out of them, and the people who were involved in great strides and all sorts of things. So I'm not just saying the space race was bad. But there is also, set in 1969, I mean, Kennedy started the space race because like, I need something positive to talk about. And like I'm going to make this moon promise because, and by the time you get to 69, there's a lot of things in the present that are real ugly. Vietnam, racial tensions, generational change, rampant political assassinations. And everybody can look up at the moon and look to the future and look away from that, the horror that they're mired in. And I think that plays a big part in Indy's journey, which I'm sure we'll talk about, of his relationship with the present. Versus time is such a great way to say it. But I love that he feels like, I don't know what the HR Puffin stuff crap is on my television show. Nobody believed in the weird crap, supernatural crap that I saw, and now those Beatles kids got songs about it. A Magical Mystery Tour is like, it's such a great choice. HR Puffin stuff is weird and magical. It's a Magical Mystery Tour. We hear Space Oddity. It's the world has changed around him, and I think there's the depth of the loss of Mutt and the disconnection from Marion and all that we'll talk about. But there's also that feeling of like, and I think it happens to all of us, and what gives it power is, you try to be understanding, you want to be open to change, but then sometimes you just end up in a place where like, I don't know what you children are talking about, and I don't even want to. It is not of my time. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not bad, but I don't know, and I never will. And I think he feels that like a wound. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a great way to say it. An absolute wound. And how you're describing him always looking to the past for these, connections, and clearly, as this wrestles with, he wants to actually literally just connect there, and the power going forward. I loved Old Man Indy. I loved, first of all, they obviously paid a pretty penny to get the Magical Mystery Tour rights there, but love that use, love that beginning of where he starts, and how it is Indy at kind of his lowest. Which is, again, another quote I saw, a lot of quotes from Harrison. I'm just like, let's take him down to his lowest and kind of rebuild him for this part of his life and the final phase of his life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, to me, what's fascinating about that is there's some amount of that I think is natural, that I think anyone almost over 25 can relate to, right? Of you're growing up and what is the Abe Simpson quote of, I used to be with it, but then they changed what it was.
Yeah.
Everybody can feel that, but after a long life like Indy's, in this really different moment in time, he's feeling that. But all the characters are wrestling with rejecting the present. The time travel, MacGuffin is this metaphor for being too stuck in the past. Helena is claiming that the dial is all just a cell, right? But it's about her unresolved relationship with her father. Voller, the baddie, really wants to go back in time and make his past right. I love the twist that even Archimedes' construction of the dial is just because he has to leave his home and he wants to find a way to save it. He wants to maybe find a way to go back to it. Everything is about, we're not entirely comfortable with the present because we still got a big foot in the past. And I think that's one of the other big thoughts of this film. This theme you brought up really speaks to me. Is it's sometimes uncomfortable to just accept that we are all of our time. That there's definitely things that we can do to make change and advocate for change, but there's some things we can't control. I don't know about you, Ken, but I couldn't control growing up in the 80s under nuclear threat. I couldn't control 9/11 or social media or the O.J. Simpson trial or COVID. and they all define my life. The time we're in defines us. And that's not always a comfortable thing because there's so much that we can't control. And I feel like the movie was kind of getting into that too, of that, like that desire to just want to be the main character of your story, which we all are, but still accept that there's a lot of stuff you can't change. And we belong in our time and you can't change it. And we're shaped by things we can't control.
Yeah. I put down this idea of being able to exist where you are, understanding your place. And that there, it hits in a few different ways for me. And there's this, you mentioned it, but going back to fix mistakes, whether it's literal, and Voeller's, we're going to go back and fix that. Harrison as Indy, being burdened by these regrets and mistakes and that moment of what would you do if you go back in time is just one of my favorite moments in all of Indy. Of this or that, check in on Cleopatra. No, I tell my son not to join the army because this happens, that happens, and this and that. It's powerful. But even for me, like I mentioned, like the Sala moment, it was no. I knew he was going to be in the film, right? And was excited to see that. And wasn't expecting much more than what we got. Kind of a one cool key scene. I loved him showing up at the end. What a powerful use of the character and to hear John Rhys Davies say, they wanted me to come back for Crystal Skull. It wasn't much of a meaty part. I didn't want to do it. That to me just shows an actor who's like, I'm not asking to co-star. I'm just asking to I just don't want to come in and wave, or punch. And so he shows up here and punches and has one of my favorite moments in all of Indy. Sala believing, dare I say, knowing he could still do it. I brought my passport. I love this. I love waking up every day, not knowing what adventure we're going to find. I love everything, and I can still do it. And Indy knowing that that's not necessarily true, and that's not necessarily the point, and you're needed where you are. And for him to help Sala accept that, but needing to accept himself is just, it brought me to tears in a way I wasn't expecting. Right. And on the second viewing more than the first, because first it's like, what a great moment. But it Sala's words and the way John Rhys Davies delivered haunted me for about a week until I saw it again. And then I immediately started doing the quivering jaw when he starts talking, because I think that's what it's all about, being able to exist where you are, but no one, you in your heart, you don't want to be here, or you want to be somewhere else, or you think you can still do it. And it's the struggle we all face.
Yeah, I so agree with you. The delivery from Sala of I miss the desert, I miss the ocean. It's pining not just for a different place, but for a different time and a different part of his life. So Sala fits into this. Everybody looking to the past to the point of it becoming a trap in ignoring how they're needed in the present. I so agree with you. I think it's throughout the film. I think it's almost every main character. And I think it's the button that makes this film just sort of devastatingly powerful to me, because Indy's a guy who digs in the earth for ancient artifacts, and even the kid on the subway is weird to him, like your space helmet, wanting to go to the moon, which is dumb space. There's not even anything there. There's definitely that, there's a level of comedy. There's a deep truth to the live so long, this world is unfamiliar to me stuff. But the truth is, he doesn't want to be in the present because he feels useless. He feels there is no one there for him. The power of that line of, why do I need to be in the present? Why did you take me out of this past I could have lived in and could have convinced myself was my heroic last act? For who? In that truth that there are always people who need us in the present, and there might be more for us to care about in the present if we allow ourselves to live in the present. It is, in some way, that to me is the button of the movie, and a really moving idea that I think applies not just to 80-year-old action adventure archaeologists, but all of us who can pine for the past. That's natural, but it's a trap because there are people who need us here now.
Yeah, and this is I'm not the first to say this about the film. It won't be the last. This film has this theme of how we all look back and what keeps us there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big thing of regret. And looking back is part of it. And having regrets is part of it. Having mistakes and pains. And, all that stuff is natural, but to see what you use that word trap, it becomes a trap. What keeps us there? And it becomes kind of very literal for Indy there at the big ending that, according to most critics, took, quote, a big swing. We'll get into that. But that's the core of it, right? Because it's how we look back. Because you're going to look back. That's, you and I've talked so much about the Star Wars thing, right? You can't destroy the past. You can't kill it if you want to. It is there, and it has defined you. And you need to, what do you need to change from it? What do you need to grow from it? What do you need to know that's very much you and can't be changed? It's all there, and it's all in those moments.
Yeah. It isn't that the past isn't valuable; it's that there's balance needed. And the film plays with it in so many different ways. I really love the twist that when they discover Archimedes' tomb, and it seems like this is all real. He used this dial, and he was a traveler in time and space, bopping around everywhere. And then we learn, like, no, he stayed in his time. That watch is from Voller. His knowledge of the plane is all from this day. Was a great twist in this tension between, like, action adventure in going off and having adventures is great, but there's also this power of staying in the moment in your reality where you're needed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I love that twist. And ties. And I want to shout out our buddy Alex Damon, who put a real fine point on the. I was watching his video on this too of Helena with the magic trick, right? The card trick, the illusion of choice. But really, she's making you. You're always going to choose that. That's, to me, was the Archimedes thing too, right? No, you're always meant to see me, and this is a one-way ticket, kind of back to here.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so great on so many levels. The setup and the payoff. That's an example of to me, in my opinion, a well-written script that we saw the fun, it's a fixed deck scene, and that just felt like character building for Helena, and it was. Mm-hmm. Then it also had this great payoff of the dial is a fixed deck. Indy always has fun with how exactly are we going to handle the supernatural and the idea that it is not this time machine to go anywhere and everywhere. It's a very clear view of this is a loop, and it's always happened this way, and it always will. It is sort of this film's answer to they weren't space aliens. They were extra dimensional beings. And it fits with all of the themes. It's everybody just wants to go home and stay connected to the past, but you can stay trapped in a loop, if you do that. So
you can't fix those mistakes.
Yeah, I so agree with you about the Indiana Jones versus time theme, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more as we talk about all these other themes. But the other thing I want to talk about is, for me, the big theme that is, it's so clear. It's like being punched in the head by Pat Roach. It's not even beat over the head, just straight up German mechanic, shirtless German mechanic, takes a piece of paper with the theme written on it and hits you in the head. Yeah. To me, it is this theme that has run throughout the Indiana Jones film and is very appropriate in this film of, the real treasure is connection. Mm-hmm. And it's tied up into this idea of battling time and the connection is the real treasure. And there's still people in your present who need you. So don't live in the past, all that. But just to kind of put a real fine point on it, for anybody who hasn't taken the time to kind of dive in and review the films, every adventure in the films Indy has had has led to connection. Mm-hmm. He's excited about going after the Ark. It's like nothing he's gone after before. And he ends up with a reconnection to Marion. He thinks in the beginning of Temple of Doom that he's going to go after those Sankara stones for fortune and glory. Mm-hmm. And he realizes the real prize is helping the village and his, ad hoc family of Short Round and Willie Scott. Last Crusade, he's never even lying to himself that he's going after the cup. He does. Right. He personally is like, cup, whatever. I got to get my dad. Crystal Skull is discovering he has a son and again reconnecting with Marion. So it's again and again in the films. Mm-hmm. And the other big picture thing that I really appreciated is I do think this film, without being like, here's a bunch of Easter eggs and nods and references to young Indiana Jones, it really takes into account the character that is built up in that television show. There's information that we know from the films, but we spend time on it in the Indiana Jones, young Indiana Jones adventures. We spend time when we're with, 9-10-year-old Indy with his mom, and we see that connection and we see that love, and we know that he lost his mom at an early age. We know that his father was emotionally distant. When he becomes, a young man, he keeps falling in love real hard and can't hold on to it. Then you go into the movies in the history there, and he loses Marion multiple times. His list of friends and colleagues are people who've passed on from old age, or betrayal, or violent death, or broken friendships, or madness. Marcus, Mac from Crystal Skull, Basil from this film, Abner Ravenwood. One assumes Harold Oxley isn't around anymore. Well, you don't know what happened to Short Round. If you really look at Indiana Jones' story, his whole life is a struggle for connection. And I think it's really valuable to look at this film through that filter, because he's toward the end of his days. This has been his boss battle for his entire life, to find and keep connection. And he's lost it all again here at the end of his days, which is why I think he feels so like useless of who could possibly need me. So that's where I wanted to start with the connection idea. I got more thoughts, but I've been holding on to the talking hammer for a while. So I want to know what you think about the sort of connection setup.
That's the start. Oh my gosh, this is only gonna get better, folks. No, I love this. This I almost was gonna do this with a want, but it's like the connection here in this movie has a lot to do with Indy connecting with himself. Like, who am I? Which actually goes into one of the things I will talk about later on, about what are our stories and who is there to hear them. I think that's one of the big threats in this too. But no, the power of the connection is it needs to drive all the films, right? Because it isn't a story about one man getting fancy stones and putting them in a museum. It is about what's behind it. It's you talk about Last Crusade of. You had brought it up in that review, and I just love the moment of Indy sitting there across the Coronado, his lifelong obsession in his possession. He's in his room full of everything his career has got him, and he's empty. He's not fulfilled. And here now at the end, his number's at 0. It seems like he's sitting in that Barca lounger with H.R. Puff and stuff and the Beatles blaring, and he's got in his heart zero connection, because he goes to this school. We're going to talk about the teaching scene, but he's retiring. His coworkers like him. He makes the joke about, thanks for putting up with me. I got to imagine there's truth to that. He takes the clock they give him. Here's time embodied, and he passes it on. I don't want time. I don't want this reminder of time. And he literally gives it away. So the search for connection, I'm with you. It needed to be there. It always has to be.
Yeah. And I think it really drew out. Indy's always been this sort of like, he's so relatable, so we like him. But he's also a grump, and he's also a little prickly. And he seems to acknowledge that, like, yeah, I chickened out on marrying Marion. Yeah. Whatever went wrong in their initial relationship, besides the, kind of troubling age stuff, was Indy's fault. There doesn't seem to be any doubt about it, that it was Indy's fault. And I love that, he's really suffering with the loss of Mutt and the separation from Marion. But it also seems like he's wrestling with the fact is like, I kind of have been just a big effing grump for a lot of my life, and I drive people away from me. I'm either grumpy or I'm obsessed with what I'm doing, and I'm not really deeply there for the people that need me. And I think that's driven home so well at the beginning, that he's got no friends, no colleagues, no students with love you on their eyelids. You got some great thoughts about the depth of that scene, but I also think it just works really functionally of like, nobody gives a bleep about old man Indy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the film does such a great job of laying the groundwork of this has been a lifelong challenge for him to have connection. He had it and he's lost it again. And then we'll talk about all these great things that are from other indie films about, the value of artifacts. Why are you chasing them? Is it power? Is it money? Is it glory? All that stuff. And about halfway through the film, all the groundwork is laid for Indy's journey about connection.
Mm-hmm.
But it just twists the knife that this is all about connection, with the revelation of not only did Mutt die, but he seems to take responsibility that Mutt, this is another example of, to me, great writing of Indy feels responsible. Like, did you talk him into it? No, he did it to piss me off.
Mm-hmm.
In one line, you see, yeah, that's the Indy we know. That's the troubled relationship he'd have with his son, just like he had with his father and his father had with him.
Mm-hmm.
The love you, but too bossy and too judgmental of one another. And you can see the entire picture, and he blames himself for it. And then he lost Marion because I didn't get a chance to write down the exact line, but it was beautifully written. I tried so hard to help her, but I discovered there was no end to her grief.
Mm.
Beautiful and painful. So you got the knife twist of that. And then you got that great moment where Helena is young and came up with a clever plan with the dynamite, and she's like, and he's just like, just murdered one of my few remaining friends. And then it's this great, Indy really owning and living with the lessons he learned in the previous films, that archaeology and adventure, they're not about fortune and glory or power or money. This is all about connection. And at that point, I think it really comes into focus that Helena is a new child figure that Indy wasn't around for. She even makes that point of like, if only there was somebody, what's the word for it? Godfather. Indy feels like there's nothing for him. He failed his son. He drove him to a pointless war that got him killed. And now here is this young woman who is on the path that Indy was in Raiders. She is the destructive Belloc-like shadow path that she's on. And he steps in, he's present for her, and he's like, basically, here's all the lessons I learned in 4 exciting films that you can, stream now on Disney Plus.
Rent on VHS. Yeah, go for it.
Right? Exactly. Rent on VHS Plus. And I think what's beautiful about that connection, and to me, why I was kind of joking at the top of talking about this, about it being really clear, is he pushes her to recognize and admit that she's doing this for connection, really.
Yes.
Her relationship with her father, the relationship with the kid, Teddy. And I think I think Helena's journey, I've seen some people criticizing it's repetitive. To me, it's the point. She is going through journeys that Indy has been on, and he's trying to help her make better decisions. He's got that great line when he's pushing her to admit the truth that this is about connection for her, where he says, "No one memorizes 7 journals for money," making it clear that it's about her relationship with her father, which is very clearly tied to his relationship with his father in the Grail Diary. And then the fact that, her meeting Teddy is the same origin story of him meeting Short Round, and you just see the shadow of Short Round of what happened to him and how did Indy let Short Round down. And Indy kind of pressing of like, well, I bet that kid actually means a lot to you. And to me, there is this like mirror of we saw him in Temple of Doom ultimately be there for Short Round, but we don't know what happened afterwards. But Short Round hasn't been around. And I feel like those connections, those things that Helena is wrestling with, are similar to Indy, so that he can help her, guide her through this. And then from that point, when those switches happen, the rest of the film, everybody's motivation is about saving each other. Teddy, Helena, and Indy are clear of like, that's what this is about. We all need to live through this, and we need to rescue one another and be there for one another. It's about connection.
Yes. So, well, yeah, I don't want to leave the connection party, but it's the same party. We're at the other side with a different snack. You're talking about the Helena stuff or Helena, which, by the way, there's always a question of how to say the names. John Williams said both versions of Helena and Helena in one sentence at the premiere. So I'm following whatever the mood strikes.
It was one of the notes I was not able to see it a second time because of life, but that was one of the notes I was going to write down of which way did they say it in the damn movie? Helena or Helena?
I'll just say I'm laughing at that because literally John said that. It does flow into it, but I've already I don't want to follow the negative path. And everyone is right to have questions and critiques. And I think number one, I think it's okay to have questions about any movie. This is something you say a lot around the Force Center parts. Have questions about any movie, sit with it and see where you stand after a second viewing or after a couple of days. I have seen one thing sent my way was Helena has no real purpose in the story. And then I saw another person make a wonderful, snide, very timely joke about Indy 5 looks like they took the previous 4 movies and put it into Chat GPT to write a movie. And I don't respond to those kind of things. So a lot of them are friends. But I always have this thing of like, congratulations, you've got the point. Why are you missing it? Mm-hmm. You're right there with this, especially with her as a character. I think she represents rather intentionally, rather clearly, as you've just pointed out, Joseph, all the choices, all the mistakes, and all the paths Indy walked before. And it's about her learning lessons. It's about what you're saying, too, of him. Maybe I've lost my son, but maybe I now is a chance to be something different to her because I messed up that, too. I love the Grail diary moment where he's just kind of saying, yeah, trust me, been there. In fact, in his apartment in New York, all the paintings are on the wall, right? All the Grail art is there.
It's so great.
Yeah. So, she wrestles with belief in something bigger or in magic. And that's the great, it's how hard you believe moment. Yes. Fortune and glory. She's got some great humor around that. The real value. One of the things you and I thinks at the core of Raiders, and I think at the core of Last Crusade, of what's all this pursuit for. So family over treasure. The connection with Teddy a la Short Round. And by the way, I would have, Short Round, is a character that is beloved and I'd love a mention of him. I don't need it in the films, but I'll say this: if the Renaissance of Ke Quan happened about a year earlier, I think he would have been in this film. Just a timing issue, unfortunately. Which, not saying it's even right, but yeah, it's that thing where you're pointing at the screen, going, "Yes," and what lessons can you learn? Because she's learning these lessons, he's seeing these lessons, he's pointing out, and to me a great way to you're wrapping up this franchise, so to speak. To go, here's all the things that have been at stake in the other movie. And they're kind of embodied in this one character that's interacting with Indy. And I think there's a moment where it clicks in for her and she's there to rescue him because of that. And because
absolutely,
and because of the things he's told her. And like you said, everyone at the end, all points lead to saving the ones you love. that comes up every now and then. I think so it's all under that connection umbrella.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that Helena is lying to herself about how much Teddy means to her, the same way Indy might have about Short Round. Like, well, I caught him, stealing him now he's kind of, he's helping me out, whatever. That is, what Temple of Doom is about in many ways in some of the more powerful scenes. So that's really evocative to just hold the mirror up to Helena and say, this is who you are really being. And there's a lot of great stuff with Teddy. I love that he pushes himself to be like, I don't really know how to fly a plane, but I'm going to figure it out so I can help save Indy. I think that this is one of the things that makes this theme powerful that you're talking about of Indiana Jones versus time. And do I need to be here for anyone? There's the Marion connection that he's still there's still hope for him and Marion. But there's also I kind of dropped the ball on being a godfather. And her in just the way that some of who Indy is because his father was not there for him emotionally the way Henry Jones Sr. should have been. I think Helena is feeling those scars and is driven towards taking risks, proving herself, being flippant about this is just this is just money. I'm going to lie to myself about how much I care because she lost her father in a horrible, tragic way, and she felt like no one else was around for her. That's all real, powerful, emotional stuff. Which as we always say, if you just don't connect with the film and it didn't have what you wanted, or you see that, you get that, but you still don't enjoy it, I got no beef. I got no beef with an opinion. But I do have pretty strong disagreements about critical analysis of the film. That stuff is laid out in the film, and it's the point. And if it doesn't work for you, just fine. But if you're trying to tell me it isn't there or it wasn't executed with thought and care, I deeply disagree.
Yeah. And a lot of it represented in Helena as a character, I think. I just, and for her, it does really align with all of the movies, but I love some of the stuff with Raiders and where we find Indy and Raiders and just kind of Belloq, you want to talk to God? Let's go meet him together. That low point of Indy, she's there emotionally and away from me, but it's just wrapped up, and she's a strong, independent character. There's a great moment. We'll talk about comedy moments later, of course, but just like, I turned out pretty much great. Thank you very much. You weren't around. I love that comment. But all that to say, for her to discover it and be there, even at the end, I think the lessons are learned so she can save him at the end, punch him and bring him back. And that's
she saves him. She saves him physically, but more importantly, she saves him emotionally. And it is this great, beautiful generational tale of he kind of saves her by forcing her to see who she really is and what really matters to her and what she's really fighting for. And then she turns around and does the same for him. It is very beautiful to me.
Even getting on the plane, in a great action sequence, but even getting on the plane, it ain't to recover the dial.
No, not at all. So yeah, not for nothing. We're talking about the depth, but to me, the value of the film is the thrilling adventure, and she's great. She has amazing comedy chops that roll naturally from the character, from the perspective, from the situation. They're both straight across the plate. That's a setup knockdown joke, but she still just delivers them with spark and personality. She is a gifted comedian. She handled all the action stuff great, and I'm not looking for these films to be the setup of who's going to take the fedora,
right.
And I'm not pounding on the table for Helena Shaw sequels or whatever. But as a character in her own right that is also going through the same trials that Indy did, it's great from the depth part. But also just like she's fun as hell and she's great in the action scenes and she's a fun character who is her own character. And she did great on all the action and the comedy as well.
I have not watched Fleabag, folks. I know I'm bad. Really,
it's real good. You'll like it.
Yeah. And as you and I've talked a lot here in Force Center, sometimes when we're so deep in that Star Wars bubble, people we've only kind of heard about come into Star Wars and we're like, oh, who's this? That was her with Solo for me. And I absolutely think I was excited to see her in this. Liked her contributions as a writer to the last James Bond film with Daniel Craig. And here, I think it was a home run, just like the old New York Giants that young Indy loved. I think it was... That's great. But side note, you mentioned, we can get back to the deep stuff. You and I we're in the thick of the young Indiana Jones woods right now. You and I have both kind of been poking back through the series. And one of the bigger early episodes takes place in Tangier. So even when Indy's like, I know Tangier, I was like, he does. Everybody, he does. He does. He's been here many times. Yes.
Oh, that is great. That's really great. So I have a couple other things that I would love to talk about in terms of. I don't agree with the snark of, hey, you just put it in Chat GPT. But I feel like this is a person toward the end of their life. I keep saying that, but who knows? Maybe he's going to live, until 110. He's got 30 more years. Yeah. He feels like he's at the end of his life.
Yes.
And he's looking back, and I want characters to still be able to make mistakes at any age, like he's doing. He's disconnecting. But he's also learned from all these movies and the young Indiana Jones adventures. And I think it's appropriate and good, and I want it that there is a reflection of the past. So there's some looking back at lessons he's learned that I wanted to talk about, but I also want to be sure to hear other themes that you picked up.
Yeah, some of the God, you make me scrolling because I was like, I got to make note of something else I'm going to talk about. Yeah, one of the other big themes here, and it might be on your list as well. I mentioned earlier, I said, what are our stories, both personal and our history, and who is there to hear them? The movie starts with that. The Nazi soldiers, when they unmask Indy in 1944, like, what's your story? What's your story? And that's just one of those. Again, it's on the screen. It's said. It's the text. It's like, this is that. And this is a film that is absolutely about looking back, clearly. So, but from that, and this is maybe we get into one of the cores of that. And again, knowing our history and our stories, the value of that. I think Indy, as they're flying into the time fissure, and he's like, Continental Drift, he's just laughing. He and Helen are both like, hey, you ain't where you think you are. That's just kind of a surface level way to look at it. But to me, the Hunter College scene, the classroom scene, which is something that we've seen in indie films before, I think you're absolutely right to point out. It has gone from I love you on eyelids to everyone crowded around him because they want him to grade his papers, but also it's a popular class. To now where there's no one paying attention to him. And it works as a comedy level. It works on that surface of like man at a time. But I think that is a scene for me. This is one of the arguments I've made offline to some folks. That is a core scene about him. Really, it's exposition. You're getting some classic indie exposition, but it's like, this is history. Does anyone want to hear this history? And if no one's here to hear these stories, who are we? Who am I? Because I feel as I've got no one, and no one's listening to me. I'm getting bad retirement gifts, and I'm in a class where I'm like, all right, I'll spoon feed it to you because no one's paying attention. She shows up, Helena shows up, she's got the answers, this and that, but so she's listening. But I think that's really what's one of the big things here is we're dealing with time and dealing with Indiana Jones versus time is just our stories. What is your story and who's there to hear it? Just shows up so many times during this film for me. But that Hunter College classroom scene is one of the building blocks.
I really love that, and I think that's a great great insight that is literally one of the first lines of dialogue of what's your story?
It's your story, man.
But I think that really goes to an idea that is throughout the films of what is the actual point of archaeology? Why are we doing this? And the film reviews some of the classic motivations. Is it power? That's another thing that's established early on, the belief that to the victor go the spoils.
Yes.
Is the Nazis are hoarding things and stealing them and empowering them and taking away other people's culture and identity and all the horrible Nazi classics. But that is clearly Voeller's whole thing too, of, you just got to win, you got to win. And everything in the world is another way to win.
Yep.
And then you have is it for money? Is it just who can sell it? And Helena trying to sell the dial on the black market, and the thing itself isn't of any value to anybody. Its story isn't of any value. Its meaning isn't of any value. And I think you're right to point that out in the classroom. That's what Indy has got by going after things. It belongs in a museum. Not because he is a raider, although we've talked about, and I really understand that all of Indiana Jones can have this sort of Western. We find it, we take it, we put it on display. That should be examined and discussed. But I feel like the intent of the films is Indy wants artifacts to be shared because they're a connection with the past. Yeah. They're a way to understand what is you're saying, what people's stories are. It's not to be a grave robber, which that's one of the greatest Indy threads that doesn't get talked about. He gets accused of being a grave robber in every film, including this one. There's a great Helena joke. And fair enough, he disturbs quite a few tombs over his adventures, including this one. But he's not a grave robber. It's not for money. It's for power. It's for wanting exactly what you're talking about. These are ways that people can connect across time, have true, deep understanding. We're all similar. Indiana Jones is a man of the 20th century. Quite literally, he made almost everybody famous from the 20th century. And Archimedes is a figure of legend, but he's not really legend. He's real. And it turns out he wanted the same thing that Indiana Jones wanted. He wanted the same things that we all want. He wanted knowledge and connection and understanding. And he didn't want to be forced unfairly from his home and from everything he knew and he loved. And that is one of the big themes of all of Indiana Jones is what is the value of an artifact? What is the value of archaeology? Why are we doing this? And I think it's such a great way to encapsulate it as, what's your story? Because I think it also ties into Indy's relationship with Helena. He finds somebody who needs his story, who needs the knowledge and experience he has.
Yes. And that's why, and she's up there getting it in a funny scene with, Phoebe kind of showing up in the movie and making us laugh. But yes, she's there. She's hearing, she's listening. She always has to him. She just hasn't seen him. Wombat hasn't seen him in a long time. I would love to do an hour on Archimedes and the use of that and going back in time to that character. We'll touch upon it, I'm sure. But it's one of the things that I think, and in reading some of the notes, there might have been an attempt at one point in one of the scripts or just in the conversation of, well, let's go back to 1939 and let's have Indy have that battle to stop Voller there. But instead, the thought was maybe it's too predictable, but this is a better use of it thematically. I think it's a powerful use. Exactly what you're talking about. Archimedes is looking for the same thing Indy is a core building block to Indiana Jones, the character, and specifically the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, where George Lucas says one of his stated purposes for doing that series is not just education, entertainment, a show for the classroom, which is a lot of the stuff he and Rick McCallum talk about. But there's some great stuff of George Lucas saying, I want to show the generations coming up that these people that made history are no different than you and that you can make history as well. Know the history, learn from the history, and you can make it yourself. You can be who you are because they were who they are. George is very, very clear about that's why you want to do it. And what a great, you got this character born in 1899 that can go into one of the most important parts of the early 20th century, where we are still living under kind of the things that these people did, right? They the world, and you can too. And that's a core thing to the Indiana Jones character and the Indiana Jones just story. So a movie that's like, what is your story and who's listening to the history with this archaeologist? I think it's again, why I say it was an important scene, but also a thread all the way through.
Absolutely. And I think it some of my favorite beats in the film is that celebration of Indy's learned wisdom and knowing that's the value of archaeology, of artifacts, and that knowledge that comes from hearing other people's stories, like you're talking about. I love his delight when he figures out the continental drift thing of like,
it's so great,
classic. I think Indy himself is thinking classic. Like the villain always misunderstands the nature of the artifact, the nature of power. They think they can bend it to their will. Then a bad thing happens to their face and or head. And Indy's there to go, yeah, damn fool, you misunderstood it on every level, philosophically and factually.
Yeah, and that includes gators just chomping your head off. So yes, I love that.
A lot of bad things to faces and heads. Love it. Love framing that as a story. I also think that there is, we've touched on it a little bit, but I also think there's, to go along with the sort of what is actual value of archaeology, of artifacts, why do we do this? There's also this, what is adventure? What's the value of adventure? And this reminds me of Star Wars because we talk about its many contrasts. And one of my favorites is, for us as an audience, it's really fun to watch lightsaber fights. And I jeer when Obi-Wan Kenobi cuts Darth Maul in half, and it's called Star Wars, and the adventure and the excitement is thrilling, but the message is knowledge, connection, peace, pacifism in a same level of depth. Like, I love Indiana Jones because it's a thrilling roller coaster ride, and I want to go on a thrilling roller coaster ride. But then this film also kind of took the time to say, honestly, I think it's been there since the beginning of Raiders. He's not like, I'm gonna go prove what a man I am. Like, I guess I'll get dragged behind a truck because I have to. And I think for him, adventure is sort of like, it's what I have to do, what I care about. And this film brings it home in great ways. I don't want to stop you though.
No, I just love that point because there's always a lot of wonderful think pieces. You and I talked about it on the first podcast, Perilous Podcast, of, hey, what's the appeal of Indy? And he's the everyman, and everyone, you kind of think you can do it too. When I say everyman, I kind of, and hopefully mean that in a general sense too. But what you're talking about is one of the key things about him as well, which is he'd rather be teaching. We've talked about that before. He sees himself as a professor first, but it is his, I think, true understanding of power, his place in the world. He's totally manly in that classic sense, and masculine and all those kind of things. That's all there, but he doesn't do it to exert his power over people. He doesn't do it to control, to dominate. Let me show you what I can do. He does it because he has to. And that's exactly one of the things we love about his heart.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it comes up in really interesting ways about, like we're talking about with Sala really wanting adventure. And there's nothing wrong with, wanting adventure, but you don't want to use it to just run away from things. I love that moment when, in a youthful, understandable way, Helena's patting herself on the back for a clever dynamite move, and she and Teddy are like, yeah. And the way Indy just brings it home, by like, my old friend just got murdered. It just brings the party to a stop, to say that, like, yes, for us, the audience, adventure is fun, and taking emotional risks is necessary. But the literal action adventure, the chases, the shooting, the death, that's thrilling for us as an audience. But for Indy, the characters, like, that's a really unfortunate side effect of many of the things that I've had happen to me in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I think, toward the end of the film, when people are taking all of these risks, I love how much it's highlighted that it is for connection. Like when Teddy flies the plane, when the plane owner wakes up, it's such a great, weird detail. And Teddy has to really convince him. It's like, no. I'm not, I didn't steal your plane for fortune or glory or money.
Yeah.
I need to rescue my friends. Like, that's a good adventure.
I love that moment. That's the character's name is Luigi in the credits. And if anyone was watching the live stream, when Alex Damon popped up, we didn't. You, me, and Alex did not want to spoil anything from the movie. And Alex brought up that that's one of his new favorite characters that I was texting him already this morning. I was like, that's mine too. Like, he wakes up, what the hell's going on? And he's kind of in. He's like, all right, I'm in. Let's do it.
Okay, kid. Let's rescue your friends from the time travel Nazi plane. Let's do it.
And I want a Disney Plus series of just him at a bar for an hour trying to convince his buddies that all happened, that it was real.
Yeah, that he experienced that. Yeah. I think for me, this sort of the what is adventure, in the kind of the contrast between violent adventure and emotional risk adventure is another element of the end that is so satisfying and powerful. It's a great fake out to the audience, but it's also got great depth that Indy wants to stay in the past because this has been his whole life. Everybody's looking to the moon in the future and doesn't care about the stories of the past anymore. And here he is living it, but there's also this like, and I'm just going to die of this gunshot wound because I'm not needed anymore in the present. There's nothing for me in the present. Just let me go. But he starts to talk himself and us, the audience, into the idea that it's a heroic choice, one last adventure back in time with Archimedes. And the way it's emphasized by the music coming up and the business hat pull, Indiana Jones isn't done. He's going to set things right in the ancient world with Archimedes by his side. And for a second, you're like, even though I think most of us could feel that's not where the movie's going, if you know Marion's in the movie,
Right.
But there's that moment where Indy almost talks us into, it's a heroic choice to stay in the past, you know, and have one last ride. And it's a great contrast. It's a great setup for the punch, which is, you know, hilarious and surprising and reflecting everything Helen has learned. But in that whole final scene back in his apartment, Marion has that. I believe it's Marion who has the line that says, "Helena told me you were back," and that's not from time travel, but it's that he's reconnected with the world. It's he's gone on the adventure of the emotional risk, and the contrast between what he was trying to talk himself into by staying in the past versus that's the real I got my hat back, Indy's back moment, is that he made connections. He engaged with the present. He came alive again.
Yeah, what a great moment. I know it's a sniffle moment for a lot of folks, but are you back, Indiana? Like, are you back? Yeah, and as far as that moment, too, just how it played, I don't know how in your experience, but I could feel, especially in the first viewing, which was the premiere viewing, I felt everyone tighten up in their seat, thinking that I think it was effective in that moment where, like you said, even though we had seen Karen Allen come out and was waving at the audience, all that left us, and I think there was this like, they're going to do it because the music, the hat coming on, everything about the iconic Indy, all the things that make him, that's the building blocks of the character. It's there in the moment. I thought it was effective. Whether or not it worked for everyone, I'm sure it didn't. But yeah, I don't want to say like we all fell for it. I think we all had that, but it's like it was such a good use of all the things we know and love. That we started to question, oh no, are they going to leave him there? Is that the noble death? Oh no. And even her saying, I'm not here for your idea of a noble death. Loved it. I loved it.
I think I mean, I didn't want it. Right. And not only I saw that Karen Allen was at the premiere. So I was like, she's probably in it. And then the film is not subtle with the number of photos, memories that it feels like, for this character to heal, that is the only place he can go. I sometimes talk about stories that feel like music, where even if you know next to nothing about music, in fact, you don't have to know anything about music. It's intuitive. You can feel it when a note comes home. And I think stories feel that way sometimes. So I think there's the great tension there to me is the entire time the film is playing this great song and you can't describe it. You couldn't write it on a chart, but you know the final note's got to be Marion for the film to come home and for the musical phrase to resolve. But in a different movie, this would have been a kind of heroic, cool end for Indy of the man of the past finds his home in the past. Like, so the fact that it almost works creates this great tension of like, in a different movie, this actually would be a cool send off for Indiana Jones, but it's not the right one for this story. So it's discordant.
Yeah. And what you're saying of him, like trying to convince her, but almost convincing us as an audience. It's just like a great way to describe it of like, you know what? He's making some points.
He's making some points. Archimedes seems like a pretty chill dude.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to hang out with Archimedes as he has to flee his home under Roman attack? Come on.
Yeah.
I got one other idea I want to talk about. What's your theme chart looking like?
I got one other idea too, and it does kind of spell out a little bit of what you talked about of victory and the ideas of real victory. That comes up a lot, that word victory. But moving beyond that, there's one thing. But yeah, we can Rochambeau to put it on the table first.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I think that's a good way to end. So let me talk about the last thing that I really wanted to talk about and get your thoughts. I don't know that I would call it necessarily a huge major theme. It's just to me, it was sort of almost an Indiana Jones way of like, here is the key that's needed to unlock the ancient language on the map of Indiana Jones. And it was a really interesting choice. And it is the line about magic. We're catching up with Indiana Jones, advanced years, looking back at everything he's experienced and learned. We got some funny lines about, have you ever been forced to drink the blood of the Kali?
Oh, yeah.
Tortured by voodoo. I love how much, Temple of Doom. That stuff really bothers me. But there's a real there's always been kind of a question and a tension in Indiana Jones of how exactly does he make sense of all of this? Because he seems to experience things. I mean, that was always one of the critiques of Temple of Doom being a prequel of like, he saw a bunch of magic stuff and then he doesn't seem to believe it, a year later in Raiders. I think a valid criticism in the mid 80s. As it goes on, I think it's like he's wrestling with what he wants to believe and how he can make sense of the story of what he's seen.
Yeah.
So it's going on for him as a character. It's been a part of the conversation in pop culture about Indiana Jones. And it's put under a magnifying glass by Voller, this, man of science, on this constant refrain of the dial is mathematics. It's science. It's numbers. It's gonna reveal where this naturally occurring fissure is. It's not a time machine itself. It just points mathematically to a naturally occurring phenomenon, and the naturally occurring phenomenon is heightened and fantastic and magical to us. But the film spends a lot of time with Voller again and again going, it's mathematics. And then, Indy gets to that line that's in the trailer about it's not what you believe, but how much you believe it. And we kind of finally get an answer for how Indy has squared everything that he's seen with being kind of a rational, I've learned that history, but I can't quite fully connect with it until I dig it up and prove it. I always go to his line from Raiders. I had it in my hand, Marcus. Like, now it's real. Now I understand it. And he encounters the supernatural. And I think that's the biggest swing of the film. Not time travel. Time travel seems obvious.
Right.
From Dial of Destiny. Like, we had extra dimensional, not aliens, extra dimensional beings. Where are we going to go next? The big swing to me is saying there's some stuff up in the air in the Indiana Jones films. And I want to speak respectfully because I know a lot of people have different beliefs and a lot of people have strong opinions about what Indiana Jones has to say about religion. So I want to respect that, but I'm just going to offer my take that I think that line and I think that perspective is kind of this code to the rest of Indiana Jones of saying the whole adventure of Indiana Jones is not validating or denying any belief or any religion. It is imagining a heightened world of fantasy where impossible, fantastic things are possible. But from what Indy's seeing, what he believes is they're only going to be activated by deep, deep belief of humans, which I think tracks with everything that we've seen in Indiana Jones. Belloc and the Nazis believe in the destructive power of the Ark, and they get it. In the face. Belloc wants to talk to God, and he gets a short, powerful response. Indy triumphs in Temple of Doom by allowing himself to believe in the true purpose of the Shankara stones. He was told that that Shiva gave them power for defense and protection. The people in the village believe in that power, and when the stones are gone, everything falls apart. Famine, horror, kidnapped children. In Indy, this non-believer puts his belief into him, and the stones burn Molaram when he believes in their true purpose. In the Last Crusade, Indy needs that cup to do what it says, to give life to his dying father. Spalko in Crystal Skull, believes that she deserves all that knowledge, and she gets it. Voller needs that dial to bring him to a war, right?
Yeah.
And he gets it. He gets brought to a war, the wrong one. So it's usually the villains putting deep, deep, deep belief in misunderstanding the nature of it. But we've also seen Indy believe in the beautiful and the life-giving power of things. And it's always when the characters got it in their hand and they're yelling at it to do the impossible thing I know you can do, which I think is really beautiful because it becomes this heightened metaphor for how we interact with objects in real life. And it has implications in archaeology and what's our story and how does it survive? Like, we give objects power, everything from actual holy relics to, a ticket stub to a concert. I mean, the world has imbued an old Beatles ticket with power, but a ticket stub to a bad movie that was your first date with your life partner. You imbued that with meaning. You did that. And the meaning is real and the power is real, but you put it into this object. And I think it makes it a metaphor for the value of archaeology, while also, in my opinion, not validating or denying any religious belief or supernatural belief or belief in crystal skulls. It's I love it because it's kind of an open-ended framing, but it makes so much sense from Indy's perspective.
No, I love what you're saying here, and I'm unpacking it as you go here because it's one of those fun questions. It's a snarky question. It can be used against the movies sometimes, but I really think it tracks for him. I love Voller at one point. Actually, in the beginning, right, is like it has no power. It's mathematics. I love all that stuff. This is a character again that was. Tolstoy tells him to look at God with your own eyes, not through spectacles borrowed by the church, and I think that does affect Indy all the way. Who has all these perspectives and learns from so many different cultures as he travels around the world and takes it in, and then this fantastic stuff starts happening. Which, by the way, I think Temple of Doom might have been in 1935. Could have been in terms of canon Indy stories the first time something absolutely bonkers happens to him, right?
And it's pretty bonkers. And did I experience that? Did I see that? What is that? This isn't the same connection, folks. But, as you see something weird in the sky, what is that? Did I just see an alien or a helicopter? I don't know. And we all you have to wrestle with it. What power are you going to give to that? How much you believe? So that makes sense that coming along 1936. Yeah, I've heard these bedtime stories before. And then it just grows from there to he is sitting as a flying saucer takes off, but he's still, it's fascinating to see his relationship with it, but this makes it so personal to me, what you're talking about. Same thing, it's the Holy Grail and a very old knight sitting there talking about big swings, is fantastical, but the three trials to get there aren't. It's just about what you know, your knowledge, how much you believe, how much you've learned. Penitent man shall pass, as we talked about in our review, it's not some magical spirit coming to chop your head off. It is blades, duck, and it's real. It's a forced perspective painting. Yeah.
Yes, it's real until you get to the fantastic thing. So it's to be wrestled with, and it's always been wrestled with by Indy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that that's the way he has made sense of it for himself, because it's a way to okay, those things were real, but they didn't just kind of happen. They happened because we interacted with these objects, with these stories. We made them. We unleashed their power. Maybe that power is inherent, but it's not being unlocked without us taking action.
Yeah.
So definitely want to spend some time on the controversial topic of magic. What's your take us home on the themes?
Controversial stuff here. Nazis. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that just, hey, Nazis and Indy's big villain. And by the way, I love the use of the Cold War as a backdrop and Crystal Skull. That made more sense. But this is a fascinating look at real part of our history, with Voller being taken from Werner von Braun, Operation Paperclip, and all that stuff, and how there's at play is this idea. It's a very unfortunately modern tale, but it's also as old as time. This is even something from Mangold of this wonderful. I enjoyed it. 25-minute opening sequence. Does play against what Indy then experiences in 1969. It's the clear-cut bad guys, capital B, capital G, of 1944, and the shadows, those gray areas of 1969, where you have, Indy's on a bus or a subway, and there's a kid in a space suit, and Indy's like, yeah, you know how they got there? You know how we're going up there? With someone I defeated, right? Struggling with that. Then you got Boyd Holbrook's character Kleber, direct. He's a gun-toting white American male studying to be a Nazi, wanting to be a Nazi. You have Voller's idea. There's so much stuff with Voller, but there's the great sequence with the waiter about are you enjoying your victory? which is one of those, oh, bleep, think about that. But then there's him going, finally, Indiana, yesterday belongs to us. And all this in an era, 1969, where the war's over, but some of those ideals still exist. The shades of gray are emerging. Think about the world at this time. Think about where the world's going to soon with Nixon, Watergate, all those things, the Vietnam War. You're talking about, we're coming out of the summers of 67 and 68, where the civil unrest is historic and important, and all that's there, and it's not clear. And so you have Indy from this era of 1944, where it seemed to be pretty clear. You punch Nazis. And now we're working with one, which is a real life struggle, a real life thing. Look at the history of how we got to the moon. I totally get it. I just thought it was a fascinating in a movie that is in a series that has been, I think, political, but never overtly political, which is okay. I want to engage with the pulp too, but this movie had just some things of, especially Boyd Holbrook's character. And you have the character of Mason, which Shawnette Renee Wilson is a U.S. government agent who she's not being listened to. She's old and has a great line to him before it happens. I thought it was all. It's unfortunately too timely for me, and I think some of that might have been. I don't want to say some of it might have been lost. I think people get it too, but I think it's. I really appreciated the movie presenting it and wrestling with it and saying that the battle is still there, but also beyond it, just this stuff we talk about in Star Wars of light side builds, dark side destroys. What's the same thing of holding on to yesterday, holding on, trying to be like the past and trying to rewrite it and to get this victory. Hitler started a fire that would have burned 1,000 years, is what Voller says and claims. But he lost it. So I'm going to go fix that. And it's all there. And it's that base level stuff, that works for me when it comes to political stuff. Of forget all the policies, this and that. What's at the core of it? What is at the core of it? And I think we saw it on display in this film in I don't say wonderful way, but in a needed way.
I really agree with you about. I think there's more of a thread of political questioning, particularly with the Nazis. I think it's so appropriate for Indiana Jones and him fighting for, who's going to remember the stories? Who's going to remember the lessons we already learned if we don't pay attention to the past and these artifacts that connect us to the people who learned these lessons? And I think we're wrestling with that in real life. I can't remember if I've talked about this on the podcast, but when I was in the 80s, when I was in fourth grade and we were still much closer to World War II, my grandfather had fought in it and it broke him. I didn't know this yet because I just knew Grandpa wasn't right. And I hadn't yet been told the war destroyed him. And he was never the same afterwards. So, people of our generation were closer to it. And, kids didn't know what they're doing. They're messing around and somebody scrawled a swastika on the wall at the playground. Is just sort of like I'm experimenting with, naughty symbols you're not supposed to put anywhere.
Right.
And the teacher, who was normally the softest, gentlest guy ever, came in red in the face, furious, and said, "Stop everything." He drew the swastika on the wall and he's like, "Do you know what this is? Do you really know what this is?" And he went into graphic detail about what was truly believed by the Nazis, what was truly done by the Nazis. And that was something I experienced where okay, we're still that connected to the story. And I think part of what is happening now and what this film is wrestling with is we're getting farther and farther from the people who lived the story. And we, through no, negative intentions, I think positive intentions, the Nazis were so self-serious that one of the ways that we attack them is to turn them into a joke. But now they've been a joke for so long in a cartoon bad guy. And if you need a bad guy who's unquestionably a bad guy so the hero can punch him, blow him up, if you want no question that the bad guy's a bad guy, make him a Nazi. But we've lived with that now, so they can almost seem cartoonish and disconnected from the utter reality of the horror of who they were and what they did. And I think without stopping this from being a fun thrill ride, there are little jabs to let's remember who they really were. There's the jab in the beginning when, Indy's being sarcastic about, tell us how you got here. Like, well, a bunch of blue-eyed boys decided to follow this, bastard. I can't remember the exact line, but bringing it home to the, master race beliefs. We've got Voller asking pointedly where the black waiter is from, toying with him insultingly because America has given him this power, that he's in this higher social standing and can say these torturous, awful things to this person. So I think there are those little jabs that are trying to remind us exactly what the Nazis believed, how bad they were, and, the possibility that Voeller's not entirely wrong. Hitler made some, real bad strategic choices. And that line hit hard of you didn't win, Hitler lost. That motivation and that, twist of what kind of Nazi wants to kill the Fuhrer. Well, one who wants to win World War II because he made dumb choices. And the horror of that reality of that they could have won. Sorry for going on for a while, but you really
no, it's important.
It really made me feel how powerful it is.
Yeah,
and how disconnected from the story we've become.
Yeah, no, I think that's there's interesting ways to approach it in Spielberg from 1941 to Raiders to this, and then Schindler's List, but then I've always enjoyed his choice of Saving Private Ryan. You don't see the Nazis. He does not want to give you 1 second of their perspective. A choice he made, and so I think it's important. And I think without sounding like old man Indy in a class, I was again doing a lot. But I apologize, everyone. Completely lost in the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles Woods for research and as well as enjoyment of George saying. I needed to remind people that, like, I've talked to folks that, like, this is 92, like, they thought we fought with the Germans in World War I, or this and that, and just basic not understanding of it all. And then there's part of the actual a lot of things that drive social change in the last couple of years, I think, are when the layers of history are peeled back to actually see what's gone on, to actually study what's gone on. It's important. It's important to learn all those things, and I think this movie, I just like I said, I thought it was needed, and they did it in a wonderful way. I thought because you're still here having fun, and it's classic Indy, this and that. But Holbrook's character, Kleber, is a scary character. He's sitting there. He's an American down to the very look, right, and he's there. Studying how to speak German, and it's not because he's traveling, and I just think little pieces like that are all through the movie, and I don't want that missed.
I really agree, and I think that it's great and powerful that the movie has its fun with defeating Nazis, punching Nazis, but also reminding us why they're not just cartoon villains, they're not stock characters, they were real, and I think for me, that we haven't talked a lot about the opening chunk, and we can talk about the CGI of it and all that. But in terms of the idea of it, I think I love what you're saying about, like, this was back in a day when Indy Indy knew what he believed, what the West allegedly stood for, and what the Nazis were actually doing, and it was clear cut. And that first adventure is it gives us a bunch of backstory. It gives us emotional connection to Basil, which is really needed and really important. But it's also like Indy back when he was of his time and the world made sense and he could still have adventure, and so there's all that. But without drawing too fine a point on it, World War II was, in my opinion, and from Indy's view, an existential threat to humanity. And that's the war Indy fought. And his son died in Vietnam, which is largely considered a pretty pointless war, especially for the amount of just carnage. And I think drawing that contrast is yet another way to say to wrestle with 1969, to wrestle with the horror of how Mutt was lost,
Mm-hmm.
but also just without putting it to words, I left the theater thinking that of the contrast between other conflicts that America has made the decision to engage in, versus Hitler needed to be stopped. Period. And the power of that, and the power that so many ideas that Nazi Germany espoused seems to be gaining steam. And those of us who remember the story, those of us who want to know the history, it's shocking that we're having to face this again. That why can't the world remember that story? Remember who they really were and what they did.
Yeah, shocking's a good way to describe it.
Yeah. So I think a great theme to pull out, if a little bit of a heavy one.
I should have started with that so we can end with some fun. But we're going to have some fun talking about action and comedy.
Yes, we are. And we're going to have a fun question to wrap up here at the end. But also, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to get into action and comedy. But we always like to touch base on the actual title of the film. Do you feel like there are multiple layers to Dial of Destiny? Or is it just, hey, yeah, that's the name of the thing that we're after?
I look, here's the thing about the titles. I think they all work in that. Yeah, hey, this is a tale about a dial of destiny and the character's destiny. So I think it absolutely works for me. I think there's something that I could pull out about a dial turns and moves, and you got to find the right setting to find that answer about your destiny. So I'll go with that. But also, I want to say I absolutely love this title. I loved it from the moment it came out. Where I can't admit I did Kingdom of the Crystal Skull there was also an era of my life where I was ready to pick apart things and have my arms folded. But in the end, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is a solid title for me. But this is right what it needed to be, right where it needed to be, and right what it needed to sound like. Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny is one of my favorite titles.
Yeah, I love it because I think there's this struggle where a lot of these properties we love, like Star Wars and Indiana Jones, are connected to pulp, and Lucas loved just embracing it. Temple of Doom, The Empire Strikes Back, The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones. In Dial of Destiny is like, it still evokes that without being too much for modern audiences. So I think it's a great title in that respect. And I also I love that it's like Dial of Destiny, probably time travel. Where will they go? They will learn to stay in the present.
Yes.
That's their destiny. The title raises a question, and then the film answers what its idea about destiny is. Be present in the time you're in. Yeah,
I agree.
All right, great. That's just the first half of the podcast.
Oh, wow.
I think it'd probably be the longer half. But we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to talk about a lot of the fun moments, the action, the comedy, anything that we struggled with. Back in a moment for all that. And we are back to continue our discussion of Dial of Destiny. We're going to talk some favorite action moments. Ken, I was only able to see the film once. I went and had a burger and martini and wrote down those thoughts. And I didn't think I was going to have that many action and comedy moments that I remembered. But I was wrong. How long are your lists of action and comedy moments?
I mean, I guess they're okay, but I got to say, because for a movie that I think had so much action, and one of the notes I saw Spielberg gave Mangold before he did this was, remember, the movie is just one long movie trailer, so keep it going. Never stop moving, and I think this hits that. And I think it's very funny. I had trouble remembering, and I've seen it twice, but I did write down some things. It's so weird how that happens, right? And I should have maybe made my notes last night when I got out of the theater, but I was went on and experienced some life, but don't always be working, kids. But this morning I was like, what made me laugh? I can't remember anything. I just remember laughing off the movie, but I do have some answers. It's a fun journey to get there.
Yeah, me too. I've got 8 or 9, both action moments and comedy moments that really stuck out to me. Cause I think with all of the depth of themes we talked about, this is such a thrilling, funny adventure. So let's talk action moments. What are some of your faves?
So our chance to talk about the opening sequence, which does run about 25 minutes, uses the de-aging. I guess maybe we should talk about that. I had no problems with this one. I do agree that at times, old Harrison's voice was more dominant than Indy in that time period, but it doesn't trip me up at all. But I thought it was more than just showing, hey, we can do this with the technology. I do believe there was some big thematic purpose that we just discussed. The stuff at the end, the bad guys is 44 versus the shadows is 69. It's why this sequence was there, more than just, hey, here's so they got the dial. So I you talk about big swings. I think it was a moderate swing, and it paid off for me.
Yeah, I really agree. I also think, like I mentioned, like Indy in many of his adventures has had some old college chum that we don't really have a relationship with,
right,
that motivates him. And I think it was a really smart move among all of the thematic reasons of showing us who the villains were, showing in Indy in his prime having an adventure. I love that the sequence almost ends like this could have been the end of a different Indiana Jones movie,
totally.
like the end beat of it. But also it's to build that emotional relationship, so we care about Basil and his loss, and therefore Helena and all that. For me, the CGI of it is a mixed bag. I feel about it the way I feel like about a lot of the CGI stuff is. Indy mostly looked great. There were scenes and frames where it's like, okay, this looks fantastic and therefore a little scary, and then suddenly his head would go a little weird and like, is that the right relationship to a head and a neck for like just a frame? Enough that it stayed still in the uncanny valley. And, the voice sounded great when it was higher pitched and Indy was doing his classic, just yelling at his companion to keep moving. Then it sounded great. But the low grumbly stuff, even though the dialogue was fantastic, it really, it sounded like old Harrison Ford voicing, younger Indiana Jones. So, mixed bag for me in terms of the actual technology, but I just sort of embrace it of like this is when the movie is being made. These are the things that people are experimenting with, and I enjoy the sequence despite saying like, not all of it works for me. See the technology of it, and maybe I don't even think this is the greatest route that we should be taking with filmmaking, but I set that aside and try to enjoy why it's there and what's there. And for the point of our action moments conversation, there's some great action.
Yeah. And there's a larger discussion about that. I'm with you on that of it works for me sometimes, and just the use of it, not even how it looks, but the use of it works for me sometimes when I think it hits, and other times I think it doesn't. And, there's also time with the VFX crunch and the issues with that on the labor side. There's a lot of bigger things to discussion. As always, we want to acknowledge it. But then when I'm sitting there in the theater and I'm swept up in the moment, I think this opening, we don't love to rank as an actual like competitive sport around here, but Club Obi-Wan, and then this is where I'm going right now. Hot off the press. All right. I did just see it last night. Had a handful of popcorn and some chicken tenders. So maybe I'm riding that high, but I really enjoyed this opening scene.
I thought it was great. And it was that classic sort of the serial adventure. How there's kind of a cliffhanger every few moments of how's he going to get out of this one. I loved the noose dilemma. I wrote down as one of my favorite things. Like I need to be saved from being hanged and shot. Oh, good, a bomb. Oh, wait, a bomb. Oh, good, the bomb fell. Oh, wait, I'm still attached to a noose. Like. That's the classic Indy out of the frying pan into the fire serial adventure action that I like. And that's before you even get on a train. And the train stuff was phenomenal.
Yeah. And breaking it down, like you said, in individual moments, there's so many beats. And again, 25 minutes, and again, this movie was long because my back will tell me it's long, but the second viewing, I didn't feel the length. It just was like everything moved smoothly, and it started with the series.
Nice. Yeah, for the train in particular, I think you mentioned it on our stream. The gun going wild and shooting back on the train was great. I also just loved that the whole thing was like, we're here trying to rescue artifacts from raiders, and it's kind of this victorious moment that the Allies are sweeping in. It's all over, which is another reason for this to so we can feel Voeller's fury that they lost. But I love that a lot of what they have to avoid is friendly fire, and that's eventually what takes the train out.
Yes, yeah, no, and that anti-aircraft sequence, just the sound design behind it is one of my favorite things.
Yeah, so that whole thing fabulous. Loved it.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I'll jump into, I was going to say the present, but 1969.
Yeah.
It's in the trailer. It's one of the things that excited me in the trailer. It's one of the things that got me excited for. This movie could be called Indiana Jones, Human Out of Time, A Horse in the Subway.
Yeah.
It was so classic. It tied him to sort of his, he's got pulp roots, but he also there's a lot of Western in Indiana Jones, particularly in The Last Crusade. So I love the horse in the subway and having to talk about friendly fire, be hit by a subway. I thought that was phenomenal.
No, it worked for me. And yeah, I think on the second viewing, I had kind of a little chuckle to myself of just, him mounting that horse and racing through. And it's like I flash back to Raiders, right? Of just like that seemed kind of normal. Yes, 36 were a few decades into cars and tanks. I get that. But it just seemed like, oh, man on a horse in 1936 in the desert. That doesn't seem out of place. This one just driving that point home. I enjoyed it, even though, it was in the trailer, so sometimes you can see it coming, but it still worked for me.
Yeah, this is great. I also, in that general whole initial chase sequence, I really like that moment where Indy blends in with the protest, which is much more where he's at rather than the parade for the astronauts.
Yeah.
So that was another great layer of let's remind people what 69 was, what was going on. You can infer Indy's feelings about the dumb war that took his son, and I loved him trying to hit the big bruiser with the protest sign.
Oh yeah. That guy is he was at the premiere, obviously, and I've been in pro wrestling. I've seen big humans. I don't know if I've ever seen one as big as him.
Really? This is coming from a Game of Thrones fan.
If I met what's his name, Magnus, at the height of his, he's slimmed down a lot. At the height of his mountain, I think that would have been the biggest one I've ever seen. But this chap is he's large. He's
translated well on film. What are some other action moments for you?
It's funny. I almost kind of overlooked the horse one. There's a lot of fun stuff in there too. But jumping a little bit ahead to was Tangier in the Antiquities Auction and Escape. It leads into the cart chase, which is almost a separate sequence. But just getting out of there, some of it was from the trailer. Classic Indy vibes, classic Indy comedy moments. But I love the tension of it. Even the auction sequence itself was this form of action. Teddy. Taking the dial, Voller taking it from him, had some comedy to it, but also Mads all the way through, just always got this icy cold, calm character. Loved all that. Just even getting to the cart and car chase was fun for me. Yeah,
and I love seeing the whip in full action was absolutely great and in a great comedy moment. And if I'd have been able to see the film again, I'd probably have like more specific beats. I liked how I liked the classic changing vehicles mid chase that Indy does. But what the moments that I remembered really loving is Helena on the hood of the car, not willing to let go of the bag. Not only was it like it was action and adventure, and it was her doing the kinds of just bonkers thing that Indy physically can't do anymore, but used to do back in the day.
Right.
And it's also that obsession. What a way to drive home the moments where Indy's been like, I'm not letting go no matter what, the way his father was about the Grail, or Basil was about the dial. She's just not, I'll roll out of the way of gunfire or whatever. And, all these different vehicles, all these things coming together. And in the center, this one woman who won't let go was just like a really great tell the story in action.
Yeah. Good point to say that, they didn't need him to do that, right? He couldn't necessarily, it wasn't realistic. So having other characters step in and work so well. I love that. He rips off her sleeves, takes apart the card as it's going. Loved it.
Yeah. And he's got some great moments. He opens that door and slams it into a guy. I got to see the movie again.
Yep.
Yeah. Another one for me, jumping ahead a little bit, is I wanted to see how much just kind of like the creepier side of pulp that this film would have, because the Indy movies kind of fluctuate on that. I loved the shot of the eels bursting out of the skeleton underwater.
Oh yeah. Good sequence too. I saw it with Grace last night, and she loved the film, but had to close her eyes. She's got some water issues, as a lot of people do and should, maybe, I think. I don't go into any water I can't see the bottom of. It was, a little bit. And I love that shot. It's scary.
It's scary and it's upsetting. It's great. It's hey, remember this is the series that helped create PG-13. Let's remember that. Yep. And I also really appreciated, like, for a big action adventure franchise, we've never really done a ton of water stuff. Right. A little bit here and there, but not like this. This is a whole underwater sequence.
Yes, and I loved Antonio Banderas as Ronaldo. I really did, and saw what I will just say is a dumb tweet going around of a film critic type saying, what a horrible misuse of a big actor in a blockbuster. Like, no, that's not how it always works. And this is fun, and this was great. And you want an amazing actor bringing so much to this one little role. I loved it. I loved his character.
Yeah, no, I would have loved more of him because he's great. But to say it's somehow bad because, an actor decided on to take a smaller role is, he served a great purpose and was charming and yeah. So other action moments you liked? Ronaldo's death, was that a big one?
Yeah, it's so sad. No,
it's terrible.
More too. Yeah. Well, that sequence too. Just the tension of explaining the stuff and giving the details and the dynamite, and I think they did, because they do such a good job with the character of Helena up to that point where the fortune and glory seems to be driving her more. And does for a long time. I think I had a little bit of okay, she's selling out. Like, what are we gonna do? But then the moment the dynamite there, it all makes sense, of course. But I don't know. I thought it was a different kind of classic Indy tension.
Yeah, because a lot of times the people who are wrestling with the issues that she is are the baddies, and they don't learn. So, the dynamite thing was really fun, and I loved her being proud of herself for it.
Yeah.
Another action moment I liked is. It was one of those, hey, I'm really wondering how this is going to resolve, is the big bruiser. Because normally they, Indy has a big showdown. It's like, what are they going to do with that? And I was starting to think, like, is he going to find some sort of clever, drop something on him right. kind of thing without having to go toe to toe. And like, I was thinking this right when Teddy takes care of the big bruiser by clamping him to that grating underwater.
Oh, yeah. Horrifying for me, but I loved it.
Terrifying, but good job, Teddy.
Yeah, no, Teddy's a crowd favorite, man.
Yeah, he's great, absolutely great. I just got a couple more. How many more action beats do you have?
Yeah, going ahead to getting towards the third act there. For the whole puzzle sequence, the water displacement, which was true to Archimedes. If you take the dive down the rabbit hole like I've been doing since the film, a lot of fun. But Helena on the motorcycle, getting that motorcycle, coming around the corner, because it's one of the figures you can buy, not like the Black Series, but it's like one of those little adventure hero ones, the ones that that are for kids. But it's like her on
with the big weird heads.
Yeah, she's on a motorcycle, so I knew kind of going to the movie. I can't remember if it was in the trailer or not. But so she comes riding around on that. I had that that's bleeping cool. That's bleeping cool. I love that. And then it leads to her getting that whole sequence of getting on the plane in the rain, going up the wheel chamber there. I loved it. It was classic Indy, but her pulling it off too, tied to the themes of going to save Indy.
That was one of my favorites too. It's just is well shot and well acted. It reminded me of the same intensity that Indy has back in Raiders of like, what truck? Like, I'm going after it no matter what. And the way she's being pelted with the rain, and just like I full willpower mode engaged. I'm not letting this happen. I'm not letting them get away with Indy or the the damage they're going to do with the dial. I love that.
Yeah, it's just and then you got Teddy getting on the plane at the same time, and Teddy and the pilot, Luigi, all that stuff. But it's just fun. Late in the film, we're still going strong. Sometimes your senses can get overloaded. I totally get that. Long action sequences in this film, totally get that. But it brought a new energy towards the end for me.
Yeah, and every time I see a film that I'm loving that's a little bit longer and I don't manage my water intake well and really need to urinate, it's always full of water scenes. So it was right about when they were draining the water, like, damn it,
Yeah.
that it started to hit. So yes, enjoyable, but also torturous.
Hmm.
I did really like Indy having that trembling hand, but taking out the Nazi to return the favor and save Helena when that Nazi is hanging on to her.
Oh yeah. Oh God, I love that moment too, where she just opens up the bomb bay to her.
Oh yeah, I should have written that down. That just like, bye everybody.
Mhm.
Final one for me is just all the great fun they had with, not only did Voller and Clabber
Mhm.
not end up in the war that they wanted to, that to be killed by the old ways with
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
with the Roman steel piercing the dragon, and them just both watching as
Yeah.
they go down. I loved it.
Yeah. There's different ways to end your villains in India. I totally get that, but that one was it was just grounded in a. It's weird to say. It was grounded in a reality in a was it 212 BC historical battle of Syracuse. The look on both their faces of realizing what this got them. And in fact, this is what some of my favorite Mad stuff is him. When the Continental Drift stuff pops up and he realizes it's too late, and he's like, turn around, the fear, the panic, everything about it. I thought it was spectacular, and no surprise from someone like Mads Mikkelsen, but it really made that ending effective.
He really, I think they've always had good bad person actors, but he was particularly great and made it feel powerful and real, and was given room and lines and moments to make that play. And I think I'm gonna dominate history instead. I've been murdered by history.
Yeah, I'm gonna be permanent resident.
Taken out. Mm-hmm. Yep. So let's go on from that to comedy. I thought this film was very, very funny. A couple of the things that I managed to write down from early on. I laughed aloud at Indy just handing the clock to the rando on the street.
Yes. Love that.
Is a particularly good one.
Here you
and then there's a ton of great stuff right away. Great kind of classic banter when Helena approaches him at the bar. But I love that his initial response is, "Whatever I did, I apologize."
Yes.
A really funny line, and one of the things that really made me feel like, oh, this is an Indy who's going through his best and worst hits of I've really let a lot of people down, and I've really pissed off a lot of people, and odds are somebody approaching me who knows who I am is going to be pissed.
Yeah, no, I love that angle of it too, of this probably has happened at least 6 times in a bar in the last 2 years or something,
And just too tired. Just I'm not gonna. Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. Very funny. It's like Reno, nothing around, and I can't remember what. No blackjack.
Blackjack. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great grumpy old Indy line. What were some comedy moments for you?
It was there was the even early on when the Beatles are blaring and he goes and he's wandering through. By the way, at the premiere, probably because obviously Harrison was there, him walking around in his boxers, shirtless, got a round of applause. That is, I think it was people were happy to see it. But when he grabs the bat, I don't know. I just thought it was really funny. Like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do, Indy? Like, who are you? So I love that. There's actually a moment on the train sequence. Toby Jones is a great performer, obviously. He's got, and he plays it well, but he's got that moment where they're going to jump off he's like, we got to jump. And he goes, what about my dingy knee? What about my dingy knee? And pulls it off. Anyways, I thought he was a perfect, college buddy, as you said, for Indiana Jones in a way.
Yeah. So great. I mean, that's such a tradition of the Indiana Jones adventures, of Indy having some companion he's yelling at to hurry up and do the action thing. It's really fun to revisit that.
Yeah. So I quite enjoyed the energy there.
Yeah. Jumping forward a bit, I loved Indy and Voller coming face to face again at the attempt to sell the dial.
Yeah.
And kind of classic, but Indy's line of, your face rings a bell, to call back to him getting hit on the train was that guy got a great laugh in the theater.
Yeah. Well, guy, by the way, the moment where Voller gets smacked off the train by that pipe is every time, 2 times, everyone, it's a collective. Oh, so love that action too, and it's kind of
It is. It's both. Yeah. In that same sequence, like a kind of classic bad guy line of you should have stayed at home or whatever it is. Fuller says. He says you should have stayed out of Poland.
Yes.
I just got a few more. How about you?
We all have to acknowledge the Teddy saying the eels looking like snakes, and just Harrison giving the solid. No, they don't. Just perfect. That's one of those like check marks you kind of need. Phoebe Waller-Bridge just has what I would call her trademark fast-paced reactions and comments and banter, which means I think a 3rd or 4th viewing, I'd be able to pick out all the specific lines. I do love her. Yeah, you stole from him, I stole from you. That's capitalism. I thought that's a great sound bite to use. Loved all that there, and just even the banter where she's trying to explain a lot of stuff in the cart chase. It just got to be, he's got. I forget the exact line, but how do you turn out? What, self-sufficient? Great, yeah. I just love all her energy and banter.
Yeah, dashing, charming. I think something like that. Yeah, it's a great trailer moment. It was in the preview scene that we got. We're lucky to see at Star Wars Celebration, but yeah, it's really great stuff. Fits her character. I do, even though the air gets taken out of the balloon immediately by Indy saying, "Hey, my friend died." I do like that. I was like dynamite in a tight situation. Yeah. It's like, it really isn't that wise. It's not a good thing to like. Yeah. In a jumping forward a bit, because I didn't manage to write down as many comedy lines as I laughed at, but I like it when she is dangling from the plane, and that's when Indy discovers that she has come to save him, and says, "What are you doing?" "I'm rescuing you." Pretty classic, straightforward joke, but a satisfying one.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with that. Love that.
Yeah, and then the Helena punch of caring at the end. Yeah. It got a laugh, it got a gasp. It was the heart of the film in lots of ways, but it was still a great joke too. Yeah, no, both times I saw it, it got the biggest laugh in the theater, and it works. I think some of it might be that, again, what we're talking about of like, oh no, are they going to kill him? Oh no, they're not. It might be a release of energy, but love it. Yeah. So how about you? Any more? I'm going to have more when we revisit this movie on Perilous Podcasts redo, because yes, you said it well. I don't have as many lines written down as lines that I laughed at, but I enjoyed it, and I thought the comedy was just well played. I really think it was, and the joke when Voller makes the joke of turbulence, and Indy says, "You're German, don't be funny." Yeah. Teddy had a good one too that I forget. A lot. So, how's that for fascinating podcasting, everyone? There are funny jokes that I don't remember. But there you go. Was there anything that you struggled with or questioned? We talk about the up and down of the CGI, but was there anything else that bumped for you? The simplest one for me, as I said before, is length, but this movie absolutely moves, so was not a problem on the second viewing. And by the way, I had like a rum and Coke and a large Minute Maid peach drink. I was like, I'm definitely going to have to go to the bathroom, but I've seen it once, so I know when to leave. I never left because I didn't want to, and it just flowed, no pun intended, so nicely. So, but I know a lot of complaints, not just about this movie, but movies in general, or 2.5 hours or 3 hours. I don't have a problem with it on the surface. It's part of the reason I don't invest by going to the theater as much as I used to, because I want to press pause when I do. So I will say the first viewing, I felt it just a little bit. There was kind of what I call like a second exposition beat. Might have been around the time of the boat, the dynamite gimmick, but I didn't feel it the second time around. So that's the starting point. I have some other tiny things as well, but that's my biggest one. Yeah, I think for me, like I'm torn about the length. I thought it moved well. I was entertained the entire time. I think that there was a real awareness of playing with expectations, and I think it was very successful in lots of ways. And I feel like kind of I'd have to see it again to be very, very confident in this opinion. And it might have been affected by my bladder, but I feel like in the build up to the third act, you can feel the third act coming. You kind of feel like, oh, here's where the climax is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I think there's that sense that is the Archimedes tomb the location of the climax? Oh, no. We're getting on the plane. Oh, and now it's not just a plane. We are going back in time. It's kind of building to where is this? Where's the big third act finale happening? And I thought it was really effective because I think it does help you forget that, maybe not even forget. I think it helps the shock and the surprise of the time travel.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I had a little bit of the okay, they are gonna keep going and go to that there. So I think that works for me. Yeah.
And I did expect them to go. So I think maybe that was part of my reaction. Is I feel like the climax is the past. So how soon are we going to get there?
Yeah.
From the tomb to time travel. How quick? And all this stuff on the plane is great and necessary, and Teddy and everything is great.
Yeah.
I think the only other thing for me, and I will be curious to see people's reaction. Really love the inclusion of Agent Mason. And to have a figure who is like, yeah, America's dropping the ball and this is awful, and I'm not going to just do anything in the name of I'm CIA and I have a gun and I'll do whatever I need to do. And then, so I really like the character, and I think as the character was introduced, I was intrigued by, is she going to meet up with Indy? And like in Crystal Skull, by the end, Indy's got 800 people traveling with him.
Right. Yeah.
So I had an expectation that perhaps she would, not an expectation. I wondered as I sat and watched the film, because I didn't even know that character was in the film, if she would meet up. And it was a little hard to, watch her just die.
Just get shot. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the villains and it's the point, but then I think I am just, kind of sensitive to who gets to live through the movie.
Right.
Kind of issues, and I'll be interested to see people's thoughts.
Yeah, I haven't seen. Yeah, of course, I've also tried to isolate myself from a lot of public discourse, but that's a good one to have. Yeah. No, I think. No, I totally get what you're saying there too. Even though, I do think it was the point, but sometimes what points? What do we need to make all the points?
Yeah, or how do we?
Yeah,
I have no problem with Nazis. Kill the American agent that were actually going to stop them. It's the casting of a black woman.
Yep.
And then and then not having her be able to see through, which she have a longer arc, which has just been a discussion in so many films of various tropes of who dies earlier in films. And I think I was just sort of sensitive to that and responding to that.
Yeah, and it's sudden and early, so you feel it.
Yeah. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you wanted to?
Part of it is it's nothing I struggle with, so it's just a good spot to talk about it. I think the end beat works so wonderfully because it's moved me both times. It works in so many ways. There's some stuff out there that there was that I don't even know. Yeah, I think it might have even been like the 2016 range draft of there was going to be an adventure where Marion and Indy were kind of on it together. And I was looking up some stuff today. I was chatting about it with our buddy Ken Plume about it too. And that's one of those like, well, we'll never get that. But that would have been awesome. That would have been an awesome, whatever that movie was, that would have been something I would have wanted to experience. And them more on equal footing and getting to go out on an adventure. So it's in the same category for me, but not the same thing of, yeah, I love Force Awakens. We don't see the big three on film together again. And that's always going to be a loss to some folks, which I understand because I feel it too. But I wouldn't trade that for the end of Force Awakens with Luke on the hill. You know what I mean? And so the ending here and the emotional beat, the comedy beat, talk about comedy, him covering her face, but then uncovering it while she's not looking at the end of the movie. It just worked too well for me. So that said, the compromise in my mind is I know people are cynical about this now, but give me the Disney Plus 1 hour special called Indy and Marion, The Happy Year. Just the 1 year in which they're happy with no problems. I don't know what year it is. We just give that to me.
I mean, the Nazis are pulling all this stuff. I've been thinking about this. I need to look up Mutt's age in 1957 because that's the key to figuring out how long were they together.
Yeah.
After Raiders, and then we know that they were together for quite a while. Here this time around. So yeah, I think there's plenty of room. Maybe you could even jump back and forth in time in animated movie of the good years. Indiana Jones and Marion Ravenwood and the thrill of the good years. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And I know what you mean. It's almost like it's pining for might have beens,
Yes.
even though you don't dislike what was.
Mm-hmm.
Force Awakens is a great example. In our Indiana Jones exploration, I love Temple of Doom, but I really acknowledge that, that there are some cultural sensitivity issues. And, when I learned that there was going to be basically a version of Temple of Doom that was a haunted castle in Scotland, like, I kind of want to see that.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Even though I love Temple of Doom. For me, two things. I mentioned it briefly, HR Puffin stuff. If you don't know what that is, give yourself the treat of Googling it. This was just one of the just bonkers things in the whole slew of show by those creators that I was exposed to early on. And sometimes when I'm like, why did I turn out the way I was? Like, because this was presented to me as normal on television. That's why. HR. I love the inclusion of HR Puffin stuff. I think for him to be just like, why am I even still alive? What the hell is this?
Sigmund the Sea Monster. I gotta tell you, I have those memories of watching that show, and they terrified me as a kid. Like I didn't know it, and then I had by the late 80s, it was one of those things where I'm like, did I dream that up? Like, what was that?
Yep. Nope. It's all real. The Bugaloos, Electro Woman, and Dinah Girl, the Land of the Lost. It all happened, Ken. It's real.
Happened. I was there, man. I was there.
Yeah. And the final thing for me, because we haven't really touched on the scene itself a ton. I mean, you were kind of talking about it, but I felt like the whole film, to my taste, had a great balance between, they promoted it as the last one, the end of the journey. You should do some looking back. Looking back is one of the main themes of the film, but we're also in an era where nods to the past, Easter eggs for the sake of Easter eggs have become a sore point. I think that they are perhaps overdone. I thought that this film hit it just right. We're like, come on, you want a snake mention? Like, come on, you want some bugs? You want to do some of the Indiana Jones things. But you also want to push into the new, which I thought the film did so successfully, which is all a build up to say, I absolutely loved the choice to use some of Indy and Marion's classic dialogue in a new context. And for that last scene, and I'm sure there are some people who, don't like it or think it's repetitive or whatever. But the fact that, all those years ago when they were young, this conversation was about physical wounds, and they're happy to be reunited. They need to know that they can be together. They've already established that. It's just like there was no end to her grief. And so she couldn't be around him anymore. And he disappeared into himself, and disconnected. And they're both kind of tentatively reaching out saying, this isn't going to be all easy. This isn't going to be all sunshine and roses, but through the pain we're still experiencing, do we want to both be there for one another? And then using this shared memory and taking what used to be physical pain to talk, very clearly about deep emotional pain. It wasn't just like call back. Everybody knows that's from Raiders. It was about the changes of time, and that this is the negotiation, that the tender, sad, beautiful acknowledgement they need to give each other, that it does still hurt a lot, but they can be together and they want to be together even though they're both in pain.
Yeah, so I really love that breakdown of it. You're right. We didn't spend as much time, but we just did right now. So there you go. It's a beautiful look at it. Because I think, not to take such a beautiful ending, because I think you're all right about the use of it, the thematic use of it. I don't know how to say this without getting too angry, but it's like, just because you heard something you recognize, just because it's a direct callback, it's not a cheap nostalgia pop. Sometimes it is, and you're right. Sometimes we're into it. I thought this movie did a great job of, it's more the imagery, it's the situations, it's the dialogue. There's some callbacks, but because there would be, but like him saying, well, you never been forced to drink the blood of Kali or tortured by voodoo. he didn't then go and then chase the grail. He didn't run down a list. It was just a real life reference because he'd say that blew his mind as he struggles with his actual age and his shoulders and his steel plate and everything. All the cost of his adventures are what's behind that line and his experience. And so this time around, the use of it is justified. And again, I agree with you. Sometimes it's not. And sometimes it is paint by numbers, not just in Indiana Jones or Star Wars or Marvel or anything. It's just in life. I totally get it. But it's there to be used, and they used it well.
Yeah. And for me, it's a real case by case basis. Yeah. It isn't just, I get frustrated when people's review of something is the member berries is a South Park joke, right? That I think that's getting to be a knee-jerk response. And I think it's because we are, we're in a time where we're revisiting lots and lots and lots of stories, or something that's popular, like the MCU has this huge, canon of literature to refer back to. So there is lots of references. So there is probably too many. We are probably, overwhelmed with them because of the nature of our storytelling, because we're not getting quite as many brand new stories, and the ones we are getting aren't as popular, with exception. So yeah, we've been inundated with them, but they're not good or bad by existing. They're good or bad by their context to the modern story in which they're being used. Yeah. And I think that's why I really wanted to say, I think this film has a good balance, and that one in particular has an elegance and a beauty to it, because it speaks to their relationship. That's to them, that's not dialogue from Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's a shared memory of them coming back together.
Yes. Like, you all out there ever been in a relationship?
How many? Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing too. I was thinking about, like, my wife and I have, callbacks. Who in a relationship doesn't? Those little things that you say to each other that are the tip of the iceberg of meaning. And when you invoke it, how much more depth is under there. Yeah. And to make this about can we get past the pain and help each other? Beautiful. Yeah, it goes in the line, and this is not something that I think it's been said by a couple of people online that were friends with Adam Witt and then Adam Hlavik. Adam's got the good points out there. Just like with CGI, just because you watch and see something and know that it was generated by a computer does not automatically make it bad. As if you can't tell, unless I tell the difference, unless I can't tell the difference, it's not successful, right? There's some things in this movie that look great. A lot of people talked about him walking on top of the train at the beginning, this and that, of course. But it's like just the mere presence of it doesn't make it bad. And that's the same thing for me with like references or inside jokes. The mere presence of it does not make it a nostalgia trap. Those member berries you're talking about, and I get a little frustrated with it because it needs to always be case by case basis. Yeah. Case by case basis. New Force Centered T-shirt. I also I don't have a lot to say about the John Williams music because I was so wrapped up in everything the movie playing out. That was one of the things I really wanted to focus on my second viewing. So I can't wait to. Sometimes it takes me a viewing or two for the new themes to really land. I was lucky to hear him play Helena's theme live at the Hollywood Bowl last year. I think he broke the news of the character's name. Yes. I don't know if he was supposed to. Right. And that piece is absolutely beautiful, and I look forward to concentrating on it more. I know we have listeners who are much more music experts and much more sensitive to it and could do a 2-hour podcast about the music, but I'm looking forward to experiencing it more down the line. Yeah. And I as someone who's seen it 2 times, but also struggles to focus on the themes until later on, I can say, spoiler, it's good. It was real effective. Yeah, music's good. Yeah. All right. I think we've done it. I think we are at the end, Ken. Yeah. Looking at the time. Oh, we did exceed the film, which has been our tradition for the Perilous Podcast for Indiana Jones. So here is a fun question to wrap up. If you could time travel to 1969, what would you do there? Look, here's the thing. You want me to give you some real profound answer, maybe go to my
parents and say, hey, maybe you should instill some confidence in me about my art, or maybe, I know you want that. I know you want that. Here's what I would do. You're talking about 1969, particularly the summer of 1969. I'm going back and placing a bet on the New York Mets to win the World Series, and then I will live off my winnings with Biff Tannen in the Pleasure Paradise Casino Hotel. That is one of the moments in history where you need to go back and bet, because that was the shocker of shocks, and it happened in 69.
Love it. Love it. I was going to say, go see my young father play in his first band, play the drums in his first band.
Nice.
But then I was like, there's this restaurant in Palm Springs called Melvin's that Sinatra used to hang out in all the time, and apparently would, actually chat with people. So it'd be a toss-up between my dad and Frank Sinatra.
I think your dad would understand.
I think you would. That's a fun way to conclude a discussion of a series that is a lot about father issues. Is the choice between Dad and Frank Sinatra? How do you make it? Well, that is it. Ken, do you want to take us home?
I'd love to take us home. We do it my way, and yours, and yours, and yours. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Perilous Podcast. Who knows if the Indiana Jones adventure and journey is done here on the show? We'll figure out a way. There's still 22 movies under the Adventures of Young Indiana Jones banner. We might get to them. I'm having an absolute blast watching that series. To find out more and keep up to date with us, you can go to Twitter at Force Center Pod. We're on Instagram, YouTube as well. Thanks to those who watched our live stream recently. More coming. Also, we are on Facebook at Force Center Podcast. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/Force Center. You want to listen to the podcast on your favorite podcast site? Just search. You'll find us, except for maybe not Stitcher, because that went away. No, didn't. I don't know. But we're out there everywhere. Patreon.com/Force Center is where you can support us directly. Follow me at Napzok or Napzok.com for more comedy shows coming up, including July 20th. American Comedy Company, San Diego, Mark Ellis and Friends. So if you're out there for Comic-Con, come see the show. Joseph, where can they find you and Frank Sinatra?
Well, you can find me spinning some Frank Sinatra tunes in my apartment from time to time. But you can find me on social media, where I'll probably talk about Frank Sinatra a little bit. At Joseph Scrimshaw is my handle everywhere. Twitter, Blue Sky. Find me on Blue Sky, and we'll see if that social media can possibly live up to its name. You can also find me on Instagram and all the other social media. At Joseph Scrimshaw is my handle. Been having so much fun working on short films. More about those coming very soon. This whole thing, Ken, has been an absolute delight to dive deeper into Indiana Jones, and what a great cap to the journey to watch this film that I think is extremely deep, extremely moving, but also has an old man riding a horse in the subway. That's Indiana Jones to me, and I've been so happy to go on the ride.
It's been an amazing time. I've always said, hey, it's my favorite cinematic character. He truly is, and I think my love of an understanding of the character has only grown on this Perilous Podcast journey. So thanks to everyone for listening. That is it. We'll see you next time here on Force Center.